this time, Martin Odegaard.
Zinchenko from Ketty, it's 4. Martinelli tiptoeing in. Predatory, perfect. There is a gorgeous arrogance about Arsenal now.
It really is. They are enjoying every second of this.
Hello and welcome to Not Another Arsenal Podcast, aka the Carl Jenkins of Arsenal Podcast. My name is Mike Hers, your host, and today, boys, it's everybody's favorite pastime on Twitters. We are going to pretend that we're directors of football of Arsenal Football Club, and we are going to spend all the monies. First and foremost, I got to say this just by an observation that I had putting these slides together. You guys don't know what a budget is, and you would never be able to work with Stan Kroenke. I just want to... Your maths ain't mathing. Stan Kroenke ain't liking this. You're more of the Bowley, Todd Bowley. You guys would be perfect for Chelsea. Let me point that out. But as you can see, live panel right now, I have the wonderful Mike McDonald's joining us. Mike, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing really good. As I just told you guys, moving house, a little bit crazy, but I've not done anything like for myself for weeks. So this is just so nice because it's actually the most fun thing to do is pretend that you're in charge of Arsenal's transfers. So I'm greatly appreciative of this fun thing to do.
As a married man, Mike, I just like to pretend I'm in charge of anything. So,
there is that.
Club is a plus for me, that's for sure. Chris, welcome back, Chris. How's everything going, my friend?
This is why we podcast, because it's our 2 hours of pretending like we actually have control over something, right, Mike?
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm well. It's been a heck of a week at work. I would normally have like a nice beer or something, but I brewed a pot of coffee before we came on because I want to be alive and kicking and, alert and focused and, excited to talk about this because I think it's really fun. And we're still early enough in the transfer window where not a lot has happened. So luckily for us, the world was our oyster and we could sort of go wherever we wanted. So I'm really interested to see where you boys went. And I know we have some off the wall picks, I'm sure, with Kelly especially. Mike's always knee deep in transfers and doing his research for Gunnerstown, and I'm sure he's pulling out some rabbits out of the hat and doing some fancy math over there. So really intrigued about this chat as always.
Yes, and by all means, guys, as I rearrange everything over here, sorry. By all means, feel free to refer to me as Hers, Chris, and Kelly for the time being, if you guys would like, just so that we don't get anything confused. First and foremost, before we jump into the actual part of the show in which we're going to discuss how our incoming, so to say, we wanted to have a little bit of a chat on the outgoings. We wanted to see what we were going to do, if everything's going to add up, because unfortunately, when it comes to the transfers, we're not predicting this to happen this season, but or this off window season, summer transfer window. There you are. We are expecting a few outs. So not exactly last season, 1 in, 1 out policy, but we do expect a few people to have to leave through the front door, unfortunately. So, Mike, you want to give me a quick recap on potential names that you could see leaving one way or another?
Yeah, for sure. I guess starting with the most contentious one that may or may not happen is the Martinelli Trossard thing. And I don't know if that's going to be driven by contractual talks with Trossard more or the opportunity to bring somebody in that's going to elbow one of those guys firmly to the bench and them not like it. And I can't tell you yet what I would do, even though I've got my director of football chair and I've got my opportunity tonight. I'm still struggling with the Martinelli Trossard thing because Trossard is more consistent and effective overall, but he's older and you could get a little bit of money for him now, maybe the same, if not a little bit more than you bought him for. Martinelli could actually be the solution to our problems if he improves. He's one of the only players at Arsenal that hasn't improved under Arteta recently. So but he's got the potential. So I hate to let go of him, but they're the main two in my head. The others, I think everybody would agree. Maybe the Kivior thing will be based on what money is offered for him and whether the club feels that, well, maybe the Hato links today, right? Maybe that's part of the Kivior thing, because I think Hato's a left-sided player, and I thought we were looking for a right-sided centre-back, or a right-sided player. But you know, all the Lukonga, Nelson, all these guys that nobody really cares a whole lot to talk about anymore, they'll all go. I do wish, I will say this, and I'll let somebody else have a go. I do wish that Tierney would have stayed, because, and I'd say I'll keep Zinchenko, but I see value in both of those guys. I wish last season Arteta would have played Zinchenko as a rotation to Odegaard on occasion, so we didn't have to have a whole season of Odegaard trying, but not really succeeding. And Tierney is just one of the most useful players to have in your squad, and he was managed extremely well last season. He came on at the perfect time over and over again. Well done, Arteta, there, to shore up wins, to play as a left winger, as a more defensive left winger, to be a third centre-back. What a great, great player and a consistent, reliable guy. But he's gone. He's gone to Celtic. I'll give it over to some of the other guys now.
You bring up a good point, Mike, in the Martinelli Trossard thing. I think the hard part about assessing who's going and who's coming with Berta in charge is that, as been reported, he loves to have a lot of irons in the fire, and he's very public about that. And the media loves to, take him up on that and report on it too. And so we're going to get linked with a lot of players, as we always do in the summer, but I think it's hard to know which ones are actually real and actually things that Berta has asked about, and those that are just media generated for clicks. And so from that standpoint, I think when you talk about like a Kivior, for example, and you talk about a Hato, which again today has been reported that we are being asked to be filled in on any updates on the availability of that player, and you would suspect that if we are interested and we do pursue it, that Kivior is likely gone. But you don't know if that's is that just an iron in the fire just in case, or is that a legitimate trying to sell Kivior and bring Hato in as a replacement? To your point about Martinelli and Trossard, I think it's a difficult one as well. My perspective is that we're probably going to bring in a player that is more suited to being that touchline winger we want, and I don't think Trossard necessarily is. He's a kind of a guy that does a lot of things well, but doesn't do anything at elite level. He's also 30, and I think if we end up signing him on to another contract or extending his contract, we're in the same position where we're having to buy another guy in a couple of years. For me, Martinelli has a lot of value off the bench because he comes on 60, 70 minutes and he's running at players on tired legs. And, while he's not the best in terms of breaking down a low block, I could see, a close game or even up one where we maybe need another goal to kill the game off. You bring him on, and I think that really just makes the defense take a couple steps back and say, we don't want to have to deal with his pace when we're all on tired legs. So for me, while Martinelli has been underwhelming in the last 2 years, I feel like in terms of a future role where he's coming off the bench, I could see a more suitable role for him, both in the short and the medium term compared to Trossard. But that's just my opinion.
Hey, Chris, just real quick, just to add to that, quick comment is that I don't know if there's a better defensive winger in world football than Martinelli.
Yeah, it's a great point.
Yeah.
Mike or hers and my refrain a lot of times when we're frustrated with Martinelli is that the kind of euphemism with Martinelli's not doing well is that we say he should go play wing back in Italy.
Yeah.
That's kind of
quality Mike was talking about.
Yeah. So, I suppose other random ones. Karl Hein is the one that's a little bit interesting to me because he is I think the starting keeper for Estonia. I think he played. Did Valladolid come up? Do we know, or Valladolid come up? I don't know that they did, because I think Cazorla just whacked in an off foot free kick to take his club up, I think, in the league or the second tier playoffs in Spain. But I know Hein is somebody who could, again, and Mike McD made reference to these guys, but Lokonga, I mean, I think Reese Nelson, Fabio Vieira, likely it's very dependent on who we bring in and what offers are out there for them. It sounds like Lokonga wants to stay at, was he at Valencia maybe? Or where was he in Spain? He was at Sevilla.
Sevilla, yeah.
I think, and there was some steam that if his price was low, he would like to stay at Sevilla and Sevilla would like to keep him. But I mean, it's one of those things too, where you're probably turning 20 million into 5 million. It's one of those things where his value is quartered. This is like from 3 years ago when we brought him in. I think there's going to be a bunch of nominal outgoings, but because there's a lot of like Berta has bigger fish to fry than like dealing with the 5 and the 8 million pound transfers in and out. I mean, a big one too that I think is actually one that Zinchenko I think is going to. Zinchenko is one of those guys. He strikes me as that he's going to have a higher price tag and more suitors than we think he is. He does, just because he's been pretty marginalized here. Because the issue isn't technical. The issue for him has been fitness and athleticism. And that's simply not the concern in a lot of other leagues. It's just not a problem. Like you can Mike and I watch a lot of Italian football. And you just don't need to be that physically dominant. Like you can be like, for example, like Lazio. Like I support Lazio, which is not permitted.
39.
Was it? Yeah. The literally the leading scorer from Lazio this year is Pedro. That Pedro from Barcelona and Chelsea, who is 39 years old. He had 10 league goals there, and he was like second in player of the season for Lazio. And Lazio until the last day was going to be probably in the Europa League until they shat themselves in the last day. So like that's a league where he can go and he can be a really important player that left back or central midfielder, or even attacking midfielder, and some pretty good teams that would be right up in there for Champions League qualification and still be able to afford a reasonable wage. I mean, obviously we've seen Turkey too. The Champions League teams in Turkey have lots of money to spend, and will spend lots of money on name recognition, everything too. I don't know if there's any sort of complications with where he's from or anything like that. But like the point is, Borussia Dortmund has been mooted for him too. Needing versatile technical players. Like there's going to be a market for Zinchenko, and I wouldn't be surprised to see Zinchenko in that kind of 15 to 20 million number, which seems nuts for a 28-year-old guy who basically got sat down by a 22-year-old center back and an 18-year-old central midfielder and kind of marginalized. Mm-hmm. But I mean, his usefulness is going to be his talents are much more appreciated in other leagues that don't put him in that position athletically that the Premier League does, kind of uniquely.
His wages will be an issue for a lot of clubs, but depending on
he'd probably have to take he'd have to take a big, the trade-off for him, I think, would be at a club that he wants to be at, and he'd have to trade out an extension for more years for a big drop. He's probably is on like 150 for us.
Something like that. Yeah,
I mean, he'd
have to be 125, 150, I believe.
I mean, he'd probably have to be down in the kind of 60 to 75 range, I would think, even as a premier player, like a premier signing for a different domestic league.
Yeah.
I mean, I suppose he could be useful like Bournemouth, maybe, as somebody that they're going to lose a lot of talent this year. Maybe Bournemouth has a good spot for him too. So there's also landing spots within the lower down the Premier League because they got money and they got a bigger wage pack and everything too. So I think there's going to be suitors for him, and he'll hopefully go on his merry way because he seems like a good guy and he's a good technical player. He just doesn't have a athletic fit within the club anymore.
I got one more name we should talk about before we move on to our own perspectives on incomings, and that's Thomas Partey. I know that the club is talking to him about extending his contract, maybe a 1+1. Mm-hmm. I'd imagine Partey's going to want to squeeze as much out of his wages and bonuses as possible because it's probably his last meaningful contract at the club. He had a good year last year in terms of fitness and availability and impact on the pitch. I think he had a decent year. I think the worry for me is, twofold on both sides. One is you re-up him for another year because he had a good year and all of a sudden he reverts to type and he's unavailable. And, while we don't need to rely on him quite as much as we would have otherwise, because we're going to bring in another defensive midfielder to take those starter minutes, you still want him to play more of that Jorginho role in terms of minutes. And if he can't even be available and available to us for that kind of 1,000 minutes in the Premier League kind of role, then there's no point in putting him on 250,000 or 250K a week, right? But on the other hand, if you let him go, you've got to yet buy another player this summer, which feels like a lot to squeeze in with the reported limitations of how much we spend in given windows with our ownership. So I can see the problem on both sides. I can understand why the club are trying to re-sign him for a 1+1, but I also acknowledge that there's some drawbacks to that kind of strategy as well. What do you guys think?
It's the old I think it's Yankee Gunner says this often, but you want to pay for what somebody's going to be, not for what somebody was.
Yeah.
And in the odds of I think it's all the biggest thing with Party. We have to be careful where you're broadcast and everything. We all know there's other stuff regarding Party, and even if there's not other legal stuff in the purest sense, there's PR stuff, and there's how it makes us look and how it makes us feel, and with some of his accusations and all that type of stuff. So the easiest thing the club could do is just let him walk and move on. But if we're meaningfully engaged with him in dialogue, and there's an offer out there, it would lead any normal person to believe, one, they don't think that there's anything to that legally, and two, that there's bigger fish to fry than the Jorginho role in the squad. And the hope would be that if he's playing in limited minutes and is minimizing how often he's running backwards towards his own goal, he can still be a functional, high-level. Because basically up until the last third of the season, probably, I mean, the conversations with Party, if it was anybody else besides him, he'd be up there for player of the season type of stuff. He's really playing at an outstanding level until he just started to fade away because he played so damn many minutes. And he basically hasn't done that since he played at Letty when he was in his mid-20s. So, I mean, I think it's an interesting conversation, and I think that there's a pretty reasonable circumstance by which he stays on a 1+1 and then forgoes his time in Saudi or Turkey or something like that. But go take Lucas Torreira's spot. Go take his booster seat. And go and sit in defensive midfield somewhere over there. So
there's another piece to the Party thing, just real quick, that has been dawning on me recently, and it's not just him. I think about Zinchenko, Trossard, these guys that have actually been a part of Arsenal the last 2 or 3 years, and a part of the joke that we were in 8th place and then moving ourselves up into realistic contention for everything. Is, if you're them and you've been a part of that, and we haven't won anything in that period, and you are 30-ish in particular, you got to think that Thomas Partey's thinking to himself that I don't want to miss out on the moment when it happens. Because, if I go to wherever, and the same for these other guys, I don't know that I'm going to go to a team that's better, that's going to be able to win something as prestigious as the Premier League or the Champions League that Arsenal are more than capable of competing in. And I think that that's something that we have to remember from the players' perspective.
Yep. Good point.
Yep.
Very nice. Just to wrap up in a bow on the Martinelli thing is, I just want to say that it's not a.
Here we go.
No. If we were no jokes. If we were City or Chelsea and had all the monies in the world, I would look to try to purchase a left wing back to upgrade with him. And I'm comfortable if he moved on. That Trossard is a high enough floor for our club. I'm comfortable making that move. But he's not the immediate issue for me if I'm prioritizing positions that we need. Kind of the same thing with Thomas Partey. I think, the fact that Merino is going to move back into midfield, we are signing yes or no, all the reports in Spain saying Real Madrid are going to try to tempt him. Everything in England is saying it's already a done deal. But Zubimendi's incoming, and as you guys said, Partey takes up the Jorginho thing. Because of the necessities that the entire club needs, I'm perfectly fine keeping Partey for one more year, keeping Martinelli at the left. As I've said many times on this podcast, not my favorite player. And if he frustrates me, but I do not in any way, shape, or form think he's like a bomb that is like, oh my God, every time he plays, he brings down our squad. So I'm nowhere near that level. So I'm perfectly fine kicking that can down the road, as people say. By the way, before we jump into this, Kelly, how's it going? I'm so glad that you're on the podcast. Chris pointed out that I kind of skipped you on the introduction, so I'm sorry.
Hers, I have big time priors of taking a simple introduction and saying, hey, and taking us down a route that takes us 45 minutes to get back on track for. So if there's ever a time to lead me out of the simple introductions, it's probably tonight, given the fact that Mike McD has carved a chunk of his schedule for us, and we have a lot of stuff to get to. So I appreciate the comeback to me, but no, this was a good time to make sure that I don't start chasing the butterflies 90 seconds in, for sure.
Absolutely lovely. And once again, Mike, thanks for taking time, because as the world could see right now, the world, 100 people that views us, you are in the middle of moving, and you are in the middle of unpacking, and you made some time for us. We really do appreciate that, Mike. So
the most comfortable man on this podcast.
100% the most comfortable man on this podcast.
It's also like an ungodly hour where he lives right now. It's like almost 11 p.m. and this man is as he told us, he hasn't done much for himself lately because he's been moving house, and I imagine that Mike is exhausted these days, but he will get up for anything Arsenal related if you know this guy. So
respect.
As I always say, nap is the palate cleanser to all the other regular podcasts. We're also a palate cleanser for Mike and moving. So, Mike, we're gonna get this show on the road. I didn't have the intelligence to create a cover on this. So as soon as I reveal this, I'm just bursting out your first pick when I unload. So feel free to chime in and start talking. We're going in list for dear listeners and people that are in the live chat. We're going based on the priority as we see it. I'm not going to be including myself. It's going to be Mike, Chris, and Kelly taking care of this. My ball knowledge is a little bit more skewed towards Serie A and England. So other than providing some wacky names from La Liga MX, which nobody wants, if we're being honest, I stayed out of this one. So I'm just playing host and adding color commentary, if you will. Mike, do us the pleasure with your first pick. Priority number for you is a striker.
Ooh.
Yeah, and he came back into the news today, right? So I'll preface all of these picks and this opportunity to talk about this by saying I wrote down 4 things that I think Arsenal need to improve at, because, if you actually got to do this, I suppose that's what you would have to do first is what's the lack that Arsenal have? What is it that's going to take us from second to first? The 4 things I wrote were box threat. There's only 2 incidences for Arsenal Football Club where I feel like we're about to score. One is when Saka cuts in on his left foot just inside the box, and the other one, shockingly, is when Yeri does exactly the same thing. I feel like
so
Arsenal are going to score. And I don't feel that way at any other time, which I don't think is good enough for a club like Arsenal. And when we do score, which we score plenty, I'm not, utterly surprised, but I'm pleasantly surprised. And I think that, again, a club like Arsenal should be a little bit more ominous than that. So I feel like we need some players who are going to offer that box threat and that feeling of, we're just about to score here because that guy is on the field. The second thing is players that Mikel Arteta will play as rotational options. So we were talking about Thomas Partey. I'd love to keep him. But, I would hope that if somebody like Partey stays off the back of last season and he's fit, that he would play. Doesn't have to play every week, even if Zubamendi comes, which I think he will. Our coach isn't great at trusting the backup. So there has to be players out there that he is willing to sit down Odegaard and Saliba and Saka and such. So we're not going to, come to February, March and do the same thing we do every year and get ourselves knackered. A third thing was unpredictability. I think, on the other side of it, the Arsenal experience is not just about winning the trophies. It's enjoying watching your team. And I think Arsenal are honestly just too predictable. And if he does one thing when they get back to training that I think is maybe more important than any other is come up with some different passing patterns, some different ways to penetrate, just some different ways of playing, because I think everybody knows what Arsenal are going to do before the game. And I know they still got to stop it, but it's just, you could pause the TV at any one time and we'd all throw our chips in, all of them, not just a couple of them, say that this is going to happen next. Because I know this happens next because it happens every week. We can't be that way against low blocks. And the fourth thing, real quick, is that I think Arsenal have to have a winger who's going to be crossing the ball with his favourite foot. If you're going to have some bigger box threats and players like Declan Rice crashing, who should be scoring more goals, you really have to consider having a player crossing with their favourite foot. And we don't have that. We have Trossard and Martinelli crossing with their left foot more than their right. And Saka having to do the same, and all the crosses are in swinging because they're all both inverted. So I would hope for a different look. So going on to Victor, as we mentioned before we started, this was something that I brought up a couple of years ago and was my top pick last year as well. I'm glad that he's in the mix. I do wonder, fellas, if he has been brought in the mix. I know there's a word for this. Kelly's probably going to tell me what the word is. When you're negotiating and you want player A, who is Sesko, and Leipzig are making it difficult, and so you go back to player B and you pretend you're negotiating, or maybe you are, so that you can nudge Leipzig into giving you player A because they're nervous that they're not going to get their money. So I'm wondering if this is a red herring, Kelly, would be the best?
This would be subterfuge, I would say, is probably a good word for this.
Yeah.
Excuse you?
Yeah.
That was one for hers, by the way.
Yeah, so, but anyway, I really hope that we pull the trigger on Gyökeres. And I will say, if it's Sesko, I'm fine. I see the value there too. And I see that he could be the solution too. There's a feeling I get when I watch Gyökeres play, and I know he's played in the Portuguese league, but I saw it in the Champions League too. Going back to my, there's a hunger in Victor Gyökeres. And excuse me if I just want to say four things here. I'll try to move on quickly. Through my coaching experience, I've learned that the most important quality for a goalkeeper is bravery. For a defender, it's positioning. For a midfielder, it's awareness. And for a striker, it's hunger. And I don't see a striker at Arsenal Football Club or any player at Arsenal Football Club who could have got to the Champions League final that has the necessary hunger to score goals. And Arsenal deserve to have that player as an option, whether Havertz starts the season or whatever. Arsenal have to have a player that's a little more, like I said earlier, a little more ominous when the ball's about to be crossed in. You think that this guy's going to get there first because he's got Van Persie type movement to be more elusive. He's just got that desire to score goal after goal after goal. He can do it with his left foot, his right foot, his head. He's willing to get in the 6-yard box, which Arsenal have had an allergy most of my life from scoring goals, simple goals in the 6-yard box. And I just feel when I watch Gyökeres play that there's such a strong desire for him to score goals. And that's the quality that Arsenal need. And he fits it. And so I just can't see past him. That's enough from me, I'd say, for now.
No, if you're a pure numbers guy, and we have some people that hate stats, and some people who love stats, Chris, on this podcast, if you want to see a radar or a FB ref percentiles, look at Victor Gyökeres, and it'll absolutely knock you on your he takes 4 shots a game. His non-penalty XG plus AG is like almost 1. He has 5 shot creating actions a game. He takes over 4 shots a game, 4 progressive carries, receives 11 progressive passes per game. These are off the charts statistical outliers. And again, it's all, I think, here's my assessment of Gyökeres is, and I've been doing his celebration kind of like half jokingly, half seriously for 2 years now. At the end of the podcast, his league concern is the only concern. That's it. It has nothing. If you watch video of him or you watch tape of him doing stuff in the Champions League, you look at his physicality, you look at his touch, all that stuff, all the things that you could judge him on. It's the only reasonable concern with him. It's twofold, right? if Sporting actually won 100 million instead of 60, is one. And then two, I suppose his age you could throw in there. He just turned 27 like a week ago. Like I don't care that much about that.
Yeah.
Especially with Ollie Watkins probably being the fail-safe if we can't get one of the two big guys, right? Who's 30 already. And I think the lack of familiarity with the Portuguese league, I think it turns a lot of people off because people just don't watch it and have no way of watching it. So when we can't do like with the French league, right? Like in America, I can't watch the French league. There's no, I think DAZN maybe has access. Like I can't watch the French league, so I haven't seen the players. And so when I haven't watched them in meaningful matches, I'm inclined to not. Like there's a reason why when I do this director of football shit, it's Germany, it's Italy. It's like leagues that I've seen because I've actually been able to form an opinion watching these players. So I think it's just the fear of the unknown, I think, is the largest exacerbator. Because you look at the stats or even watch highlights of him play, he seems like an absolute monster, especially in the 18-yard box.
Yeah, let me just add, Hers, just real quick to the Gyökeres pitch. If you were the type of player I'm describing is someone like Haaland, a player who is unsatisfied. And I love strikers who are unsatisfied. They score one, it's not enough. They want to score two. And they want to fight over the penalty kick so they get their hat trick. That's the kind of striker I want, a striker who's unsatisfied. And, Gyökeres, if you were to take someone like Haaland and put him next season in the Portuguese league, playing for Sporting Lisbon against all of those teams, some of them are quite good and the rest of them are awful, would he score, what was the stat? Was it 50, 60 goals or something? And all those assists, would he do that? So, if he was to be transferred there, not going to happen, but if he was, you'd expect about 40 goals and far less assists because he doesn't really do that. Maybe give him 5 or 6 assists. And that's what I expect him to do. So why are people saying, well, it's just the Portuguese league? Well, if one of these other top strikers played in the Portuguese league, I don't think they're going to do any better than Victor Gyökeres. I mean, what do we expect here? And just because he hasn't been given the chance to show it, but just a few times in the Champions League, doesn't mean you rule him out just because he played in Portugal. But those stats, like Kelly said, are just unreal. So
there's some Premier League snobbery too. Mike McD, I actually think it hurts him that he did well in the Championship too, and not like the second tier of Spain or like Ligue 1 or something like that, or like Italy. I think the fact that he was in the Championship, that hurts him in the perception of English soccer fans or football fans. Sorry, man, I stepped in that all of a sudden, right? Yeah. But like truly, that's what it is. It's like, oh, he played for Coventry, which is a mid-table Championship club. I think that hurts him. Even if he did great there, and even if he earned a transfer that's relatively high bond transfer to one of the best teams in Portugal and done nothing but score 8,000 fucking goals in the intervening time, that actually hurts him that he was successful in the Championship before, because there's a heel of my shoe type of element to the Premier League fans versus Championship stuff.
I think Darwin Nunez also coming from that exact same league and scoring tons of goals in Portugal and then coming to England and not doing a darn thing other than run around a lot and kick the ball into Rosette repeatedly, I think has colored our perception of Gyökeres. And who knows? He could come here and flop just like Nunez. And I think that's people's fears. Or he could come here and do and approximate what he did in Portugal and score 80% of what he did in Portugal here in the Premier League and be a huge hero, right? Like I think we're very much conditioned to fear the worst because we had the Darwin Nunez effect happen for the last 3 years, and now Liverpool are looking to offload him at a loss.
Also, it's noteworthy too that there was like 4 total players in the Premier League that scored 20 or more goals this year.
Yep.
It doesn't. Havertz had what, 9 or 10, and he was hurt for.
3 months.
Like a third of the season. Like he doesn't have to be whatever striker. Okay, and then we'll let hers move on. I'll cap this, which is not my style, but I don't think it's going. His floor is probably pretty damn high, and I think a high floor is probably sufficient to have him score a lot of goals in Arsenal.
So just to put a bow on the conversation, I was curious to see who chose Gyökeres and who chose Sesko between all of you guys. So
Yeah.
Mike pulled the trigger on Gyökeres. We didn't have an agreement on no repeat players, so maybe there's overlap. Maybe somebody else chose him. I'm not entirely sure. We will see that. But I saw an interesting point of view in which we said we're doing the same thing with Gyökeres that we did with Lacazette.
Yeah.
And I replied to that and said, hey, that's a little harsh on Gyökeres, right?
Yeah.
And somebody pointed out that prior to us purchasing Lacazette, we purchased him and he had like 20, 30 goals in the league, but like 10 of them or 12 of them were penalties as well. And I know penalties is maybe a silly thing for a lot of people to factor in because it's, it's non-open play goals, but it's interesting to see, again, you talk about weaker leagues and Lacazette didn't exactly translate exactly from League One to EPL. And on the flip side of that, there's tons, and I mean tons of examples in which, to say everybody from the Portuguese league hasn't never hit the floor running, well, Bruno Fernandes exists, right? To say, et cetera, et cetera. So people from from the championship come up, Vardy, and he hits ground running. So there's a counter argument on this to either way is what I'm trying to say. It's not just like black and white. So it really is one of those things that you just kind of hope that the club and the manager did the due diligence, watching a film, and feel satisfied with whatever the hell they saw to point them in one specific direction and just hope. The one thing that I feel optimistic most of the time, and maybe they're guilty of doing it a little too much, is it's almost like they do this whole background check on personality. And you have to be like not only a good footballer, but you got to be in like an example as a
character.
being,
To
play for the Arsenal. And so again, just all these things, I'm giving the club the benefit of the doubt. As you guys know, even though I've been a little impatient the last week or so, my whole thing is just before preseason. So all my crying, I'm setting aside, and I'm just trying. I'm still losing my head, but I'm just trying to stay calm, cool, and composed. On the whole transfer thing, we'll see how it plays out. It is frustrating seeing our rivals be so active, but hey, they got the Club World Cup going on and other things. So calma. But as far as players coming from other leagues, I think you can make an argument for and against it either way. By the way, Mike, I forgot to tell you, in case you have those numbers evaluations written up on your cardboard there, as you said prior to the game, to the podcast, I upped it 10 million to 65 to 75 only because of what the sporting director said today. So your evaluation is going to be off 10 mil based on some stuff that I did over here. Just FYI. And
Mike's driving a hard bargain. Look at this guy.
I'm driving a hard bar. Hey, sir, if you're gonna make me pay, Mike, I got every cent values. Chris, you are up next with your number one pick, and you value this gentleman at 80 million.
Ooh, there it is.
So before I get into this, Bradley Barcola, we should talk really briefly about just the format of how we did this. So we all set a transfer budget of 200 million that felt realistic in terms of what we've been linked to and some of the reporting that's been coming out of the media. We also allowed for a bonus pick in case, outgoings covered another kind of 50 million plus or cheaper player. So you'll see us pack as, the players that we really wanted, prioritize for 200 million and then a bonus player at the end. So my priority was actually not striker. It was actually a wide player. It was a winger on the left-hand side in particular, because I think in the modern game, I think attacks from wide areas have been more important and have produced more goal scoring than actually strikers have, which is why I think we see a dearth of high-end elite strikers in the game today, is because all the elite goal scorers are coming in from the right wing and the left wing. So I think we have a clear area to upgrade on the left-hand side over Martinelli and Trossard. And I really wanted to highlight, I think, areas of this squad that I think are lacking a lot, which I think has diminished our goal scoring output. and that is, I think, the ability to dribble and carry, both over long distances as well as in traffic. Pace, I think we've got one player who has decent pace in our forward line, and that's Martinelli. I don't think Saka does. I definitely don't think Havertz does. Odegaard, nope. Rice can run forever, but he's not. I wouldn't call him elite in terms of pace, and he's certainly a midfielder anyways. A variety of ways to score, directness. Clive said on AVP a few weeks ago, he said it, and I was like, wow, he's totally right. We are really dumb when we get to the final third.
Yes.
It's almost like we don't know what to do, and we don't make good don't make good decisions. And I think part of that is we just don't have the right profiles to make things happen. When I watched PSG in the Champions League this year, and I saw that they had basically 4 wide players that all played at elite levels, I want one of those. So out of all the wingers that are out there that I think could be gotten, and I think it is a stretch. I think to get Bradley Barcola out of Paris Saint-Germain will not be easy, but I think out of the ones that I think are possible, he is actually one that excites me most. And that is because he is a true wide player. He plays off the touchline, like how we have our left winger plays. He's not a guy who loves to drift inside to receive the ball. And that's, I think, part of my worry with Rodrigo, is that he is not a touchline player. He tends to drift inside a lot. And I think we're going to have to adjust how we play on the left-hand side to accommodate him. I like the player. And I think if Arteta really loves the player, he will find a tactical solution to make him work. But I don't think he is as seamless as we might want him to be from the standpoint of just replicating what we've been doing. And what I love about him is that he not only is a goal scorer, he had 21 goals this season in all comps, but he also had 19 assists. So he's also a creator. And as we know, we didn't suffer from not converting our chances this season. We suffered from not creating enough chances. And so I love a player anywhere we can get them who is both scoring goals and creating chances, and he does both at an elite level.
Noteworthy with Barcola too. Basically dead on for XG and XA. So there's a statistical outlier season with Barcola, right? Where if he just overperforms his XG or his teammates kick the ball in the goal more regularly, where he goes from 14 and 10 to 17 and 14. And all of a sudden, this is a £100 million player that we can't touch now, too. And that's all in there. And somebody who has not quite turned 23 and has just accomplished everything at PSG that he could, and seems to be resigned to a backup role to a 19-year-old.
Yep.
So there's some motivation in carving your own way and having a clear pathway there, too. And we'll see later why I'm so interested in Bradley Barcola also.
Me and Kelly, this is one that we both shared high affection for.
Coming soon.
The other thing about his situation is that his situation is not unlike Rodrigo's, in that Rodrigo last year was asked to play off the right a lot more, where his natural position is off the left. And they just bought a 17-year-old wonder kid from Argentina. And if you believe reports out of Madrid, that player is actually going to be pipped to start over Rodrigo. So you look at PSG, they just bought Kvaratskhelia in January. He started taking a lot more minutes from Bradley Barcola in the league, and even the Champions League. He played more than Bradley Barcola. Barcola was resigned to playing out of position or playing reserve minutes.
Yeah.
And if you're the director of football, you have to inquire about whether or not Bradley Barcola wants a nailed-on starting job at a elite Champions League level quality club. And so that's why I would absolutely go after him. Just a few things. I pulled a quick I know, Mike, you hate this, but but like a nice little spider chart. This is him in his Champions League is red and league is blue. Basically, he has a very similar output regardless of whether it's the Champions League or Liga. And as we know, Liga is, kind of at the bottom of the top 5 leagues. So it tends to be an easier league. Just look at Alexander Lacazette. If you want to see like what happens when players play in the French league, there's a bit of an inflation going on. But as you see, when he upped the competition against Champions League, there wasn't much of a fall off. If you look at the percentiles, he creates a huge amount of XG. He's in the 98th and 99th percentile. He takes over around 2.5 shots a game. he's an elite dribbler. His dribble and carry stats are, in the top 2 to 3% of all wingers. I mean, you go on and on about the player, but I think he fits like a glove in terms of what it is we need, and he doesn't require us to play in a different way than what we already play. So I love the player, and that would be the one that I would prioritize.
I'm sorry, Chris, did I see that correctly? At the very top right of that chart, it says it's 17 games compared to 39 games. Appearances. There you go.
Yeah, appearances. So 17 in the Champions League, 34 in Liga.
Oh, it's percent. Okay, I was kind of curious. I'm like, dude, that's just some insane consistency. So
he played 2,100 minutes in the league, which is not a ton if you think about a player who really wants to start most games. So
sure. Yeah, me personally, Chris, I think we had this discussion like last summer, and one of the questions was, do we need to find a striker in order to win the league? And my biggest unpopular opinion, if you guys will, I said no. My biggest issue was the attacking options outside of Kai Havertz, and believe this or not, guys, I'm going to say Gabriel Jesus. And I thought that we were limiting ourselves for different type of attack. So as far as me, just preference wise, I would be more satisfied at investing money on a player like this than a player like Šeško Gyökeres as far as priority goes. Again, potentially might be unpopular, if you will, but that's where I'm at right now. Mike, before I move on to Kelly's first pick, would you like to add anything to the left wing and Barcola situation?
Yeah, I mean, I'd be thrilled if we could get him. He is electric. I enjoy watching him cross the ball more than anything else because he seems to find the correct pocket of space. And, I always try to teach young men to, if you don't have time to pick your head up, which most wingers don't have a whole lot of time to do that, or you don't know what to do, get into the habit of crossing to the biggest gap that you can see. Because if you cross to the biggest gap, that's where your player should be in that passing lane. And if he's not, that's on him. So that seems to be one of Barcola's big skill sets. You might have noticed against Arsenal, he'd often get on the outside of the defender and cut it backwards to almost towards the edge of the box where there was the biggest gap. Yeah. And I loved that about him. I just don't see how Arsenal could prize him away. I mean, they just won the Champions League. He's got so much potential. He's got to be able to believe in himself that he can get more minutes than he did last season because he's only going to get better. So if I was him, if I was going to leave, I might wait another season to see if my minutes diminish or don't get any greater because he's got lots of time on his side. But I'm not sure right now is the time to leave PSG because that team is rather impressive. And he's got the world at his feet. And so he can afford to make a mistake for 1 year, right? And play a third of the minutes available and it not really hurt his career and move on later. But so I just don't know how that's an intelligent choice for him unless he's just super impatient and he just wants to play a whole lot more now and we can offer that to him. But what a talented young man he is.
Very nice. Yeah, it's exciting prospect. And to your point, it'd be difficult to get him out of PSG, but what a wonderful player. Kelly, here comes Kelly. Kelly had all the fun picks, in my opinion. I like me some Kelly picks. So, by the way, just as a reminder, we were valuing Barcola at 80 million pounds. Kelly, your first pick is Adam Wharton from Crystal Palace, and we got him down for 60 million pounds.
Yep, I'm going to year that up. I'm coming with Adam Wharton, the crew-cutted white defensive midfielder for a less fashionable London team. So basically, remember, we're living in a universe here where there is no Zubimendi. He's not coming. He's going to be pipped by Real Madrid or Barcelona, and Zubimendi is gone as far as we're concerned. So Adam Wharton is one of those players that it's not easy for a defensive or a holding midfielder to pop. And every time I watch him play with England or Palace, he just jumps off. He's always forward. He can carry it. His intelligence in space is unbelievable. He's an incredibly progressive player. And like, remember, too, because you go and pull up the stats with Wharton, and a couple of different things I think have hurt him this year. One, he's literally has had injury issues the last 2 years. So he only played 1,300 minutes for Palace, had a couple of assists. He's not going to be somebody who's racking up counting stats. That's not what you do as a holding midfielder. And I mean, that's not really what Zubimendi does either. But the idea with Wharton is that you're getting an elite progressive passer. That's the biggest thing. You're getting and to the extent that people care about this, he's homegrown English. So there's always going to be a market for him if he doesn't do exactly what you need him to do. You're not going to be stuck. You're never going to be stuck with Adam Wharton. He just turned 21. He has these really, really big shoulders that can carry that's really helped carry Palace to an important place too. So Palace being kind of an also-ran of London, I mean, there's a bunch of stuff going on with whether they're going to be able to make the Conference League or not because of multi-club ownership, and to the degree that doesn't affect the actual oligarchy clubs, like fucking whatever. We're not going to touch that here. But you're going a little bit off of what your eyes tell you with Wharton. And he's somebody who, again, he's incredibly intelligent, incredibly forward-facing, an elite line-breaking passer, somebody who you're buying not just for now, but you're buying for what he's going to be for 2, 3, 4 years in the future when he's hitting his prime in his 20s. And I don't think that he's one of those players either that you're just taking a punt on, because his price tag is not punt. But you could sit him down basically what Partey does right now. And I think that there's an incredibly analogous player to what Partey is going to be able to do next year. And the ceiling is unlimited. Basically the same thing that Arteta did with Declan Rice was just take a very, very good 6 and envision his athleticism and his potential and all sorts of these other traits and create this kind of all-world box-to-box player. One of the only players actually only £100 million transfers in history that has actually been a good deal for those players is what Declan Rice has proved to be. I think Wharton at the quoted price is somebody who is worth taking a swing at, and past a swing, because I think his the minimum that he would do is be somebody like Partey, somebody who's incredibly secure on the ball, really progressive passing, a good tackler, a reliable player, and somebody who's going to be a regular in English teams for the next, 8 to 10 years. And if that's your floor as Arsenal Football Club, that's an incredibly important player. But his ceiling is one of the very best deep line playmakers in the world. That's where he's going. And he's already in London. He's already familiar with the league. He's proven himself over the last couple of years that he can step in and immediately be a difference maker, playing with some pretty average players. I mean, like the interior mid for Palace has a very, very good attacking midfielder, and Eze has a very good wing backs and kind of a system that is good for knocking and running, kind of. But I mean, these are all players that, aside from Eze and maybe Dean Henderson, that besides him are pretty much second or third tier players. And he looks absolute class gliding through the midfield and moving the ball and carrying it through the lines, and especially with this magic left foot passing through the lines and seeing these passes that nobody else can. And I imagine with a larger sample size and more meat on his bones and a better manager and better talent around him, that he would absolutely explode at Arsenal. So that's in complimenting the club and saying maybe that deep line playmaker is the number one priority. He would be my number one priority to get under contract. And I think he's imminently gettable, given the fact that we would probably triple his wages and he'd be starting in a Champions League team immediately.
What he also offers, sorry, Mike.
No, I was just gonna say I like what you're doing here, Kelly, because he's really appealing to Arteta, because we're super pro defensive players, defensive midfielders. So you ain't got the Kroenke's vote, or the fans' vote, but you definitely got Mikel Arteta's vote, because he's a defensive unit to cover up the back.
He's a deeply Arteta player. He's a very, very Arteta player. Yes, a giant brain, deep line playmaker who knows the league and knows how to progress the ball at an elite level already.
Definitely has a type for sure. Go for it, Chris.
I think he also adds steel on the defensive side of the ball. From what I've seen, he's not a pushover on the defensive side of things, where I feel like Zubimendi, if you leave him on an island and you don't have Declan Rice sitting there next to him, babysitting him when we don't have the ball, I think there's a bit of a worry. I'm not saying that it's an extreme worry, but I don't think you have to worry about that nearly as much with Adam Wharton because of what he can do on the defensive side of things. So yeah, it's it would be a steal. It would be a great get. We're not going to get him because we're
No.
likely getting Zubimendi. But hey, as people were talking about in the chat, I think there's some confusion. We ignored everything the club has already done or looks to be doing and said, if we were the director of football from the moment that Berta arrived, we were the director of football. How would we have approached this window, and what would we have done, irrespective of what the club has actually done? So you may hear some of us talk about Zubimendi and Sesko and Kepa, but you might not. So
yeah, and for our sake too, like this is a perfect thing that we are deeply involved in football, and we have favorites, and we have players that we really like, and we have big reasons why we like them a lot. And this is a player that I have basically loved from the first couple of games I've seen him play for Palace. And if people listen to this pod enough, they know that I have a very big soft spot for Palace generally, and have for many years. So on a kind of more personal level too, I mean, it's hit me right in the feels too, because I remember him coming in and being purchased, me like, oh, this guy's interesting, looking at some of his championship highlights and yada yada. But no, if you don't know him, watch some England matches and watch Palace next year, because they look to have a lot of the same people returning, particularly if they're able to get into the Conference League and have that European money.
Very nice, Mike. I'm getting a little concerned because you look so comfy in your couch over there. Don't fall asleep on me, big guy. I know it's late. Okay, hang in there. We're promise. We're only gonna dissect round 1 and round 2 like crazy. The rest of the rounds are gonna move slightly longer. I promise you. We'll get you hopefully off the podcast before midnight your time. So just buckle up there, Mike. All right.
Don't worry, I'm not in a rush. I'm just enjoying this little pleasure couch that I purchased. So I'm trying not to slide any further down it, but I'm not tired now. This is great. Let me add super quick. Let me add to the Adam Wharton thing. I would have chosen Adam Wharton if the budget was unlimited. I just couldn't, with the other picks that I've chosen, I just couldn't afford him. Everything Kelly said, spot on, I think. And I fear that he's going to go to Manchester United and be largely responsible for transforming that team from a 15th place team to maybe, I don't know, a 9th place team. Because I think he's really what they're missing at that club in the middle of the park. So I hope that doesn't happen. And I hope that Thomas Tuchel will stop picking Jordan Henderson and pick Adam Wharton, because Adam Wharton hasn't played for England, I don't believe, under Thomas Tuchel, which as an Englishman is rather concerning when he chooses Jordan Henderson. But I can't speak to the impact off the field of Jordan Henderson. I get it, but I don't understand what's going on there.
Okay. Lovely. Like I said, I like doing these type of podcasts with you guys because you open my eyes on players that I quite frankly don't watch a whole lot. So now when I hear their name pop up and I know Crystal Palace is playing, at least I'm going to be a little bit more aware. I'm going to be more in tune with the player now. So it's one to watch for sure for me. Mike, your second round pick, if you will, you got Mohamed Kudus, valued at £60 million.
Okay, so I toyed with my second pick for the longest out of all of my picks because there are so many options I think available who are so the left wing is my second greatest need, and I know that Mo Kudus doesn't necessarily play on the left wing. He has, but that's not his primary position, as you all will know. But because, again, we had a budget, I wanted to find a player that could do two things. So I sacrificed the player that I would have chosen for the left wing to get a player who can play in three positions, because I think Arsenal need help in three positions. So the left wing, obviously we've talked about that as an upgrade need. I think he could play there. He has played there before, but as I said at the outset, I think Arsenal strategically, and especially if they're going to have a hungry striker in the box who's going to be better in the air and just more hungry in general, they really need to sign a winger who's going to be able to cross with their favourite foot, because we don't have that, and that's a flaw, I think, in our game plan. And I think that the signing of Mo Kudus could move Saka to the left. Not always. It could be in game. I've never understood why Arteta doesn't just change it up when Saka gets crowded out and move him to the left. Of course, Kudus could play on the left, but playing one of those two guys in a position where you've got one of your wingers crossing with their favourite foot. I've also got this frustration that we're not using the Declan Rice thing in particular. He seems to always be in the box religiously in every situation when the ball is wide, and very, very rarely is the ball crossed to Declan Rice. And you can't tell me that he can be a monster in the air and score 5 goals a season with his head. But again, we're crossing the ball away from him in swinging because of our inverted wingers. If you put somebody like Kudus on the left or Saka on the left and you do an outswinger, that ball's now coming to where Rice is, where he's positioned between the top of the box and the penalty spot. And I think that that's a lot harder to defend because the centre-backs are covering the 6-yard box. So that's one reason I wanted Kudus. The second reason is, when you're trying to find somebody who is going to cause the same threat as Saka and be of that similar level, I see Kudus as like a Saka 2.0. I mean, he's got the same strength. He's got the same, I think, skill, ability on the ball, offers a very similar threat. I think he would be given more credit for his threat if he played for a bigger team than West Ham. So I think you have to take that into account. When I know he didn't have a great season, but did anybody at West Ham? So there's that. And then the third position, the reason that I chose Kudus over the guy who I was going to pick for my second pick was because with this $200 million, I want Odegaard to be sat down for his own sake. He puts so much energy into every game, and he desperately needs to be rotated, and Arteta has to have a player that he feels comfortable to rotate him. And I don't know if you guys are familiar or not, but Kudus, before he came to the Premier League, played as many minutes inside in Odegaard's position as he did anywhere else. Even played as a striker, but I think he's somebody that if I told you Odegaard's going to sit down today and Kudus is going to play as a right 8 with Saka on the right of him perhaps, and then somebody else on the left, that everybody would be cool with that. Because so anyway, you can sit Odegaard down, and so you've got a player who's not just a left winger to play alongside Trossard and Martinelli, or give them competition. Sorry, you've got somebody to back up Saka. If Saka was sitting down for a game and Kudus was there, I think everybody would be pretty cool with that. You can bring Saka on later, and I think Kudus would make people feel comfortable to sit Odegaard down. So I guess you call that some kind of a triple threat. He's Premier League ready. And the other thing that I like, and all of my picks are this, I like to find players that I think would be motivated. So all of my players play for lesser clubs than Arsenal and have got something to prove and haven't played at this level. And he falls into that category. I think he would be excited to play for Arsenal. A player like Rodrigo would worry me because you don't get any higher than Real Madrid. And so, things aren't going his way. He might start pouting. Last point I wanted to make about Kudus is that hold on, no, I might have got through it all. I don't want to overspeak.
You're talking with Kelly on the pod right now.
There's your final point. He has brilliant hair.
Just my last point. This was a concern. I don't know if you guys have noticed that Arsenal haven't been linked over the years with many African players, and I think the African Nations Cup is actually in December this year, and I think it's only Thomas Partey, you guys can tell me if I'm wrong, who would be the only player that would leave the club. And that was a consideration under Wenger, that we would lose 2 or 3 players, key players. And so that would be a concern for me, but not enough for me to not choose him over players like I considered Gibbs White, Morgan Rogers, all these players, similar kind of price range, can play multiple positions. But I think this is the right one. And I'm making my son very happy He's his favourite non-Arsenal player, so he'll be very excited to listen to the podcast in the morning.
I think his superpower in this Arsenal squad would be his super utility flexibility, because he, as you noted, Mike, he can play right wing, he can play both the interior midfield spots, and he can play left wing. So really, he could deputize, in theory, 4 spots. I think Stan brings up a good point in the chat where he says why can't Nwaneri deputize for Odegaard? And I think he can, and I think that's probably his long-term landing spot. I think the club really wants him to play in the interior rather than next year, and I think as we saw him and Odegaard play together with Nwaneri playing nominally as the right winger, they tended to step on each other's toes because Nwaneri loved to come inside. So I agree with that, but I think if you buy a Kudus, what you have is someone who's going to be able to spell Saka at times, he's going to be able to spell Odegaard at times, and he could spell, in theory, the left 8 as well as the left wing as well. So I like that from a maximization and efficiency perspective, in buying one player at 60 million, but you've got a guy who can cover, at least 2, 3, 4 positions.
I do have my last point. I almost forgot. This is kind of important, so I'll just give this one some air. Odegaard is a certain type. I think the reason that Nwaneri is probably not going to be trusted to be his full-time deputy is that Odegaard is the conductor of our team when he's playing well. That'd be a lot to put on a young guy. But the difference between a Kudus and Odegaard is something that Arsenal also lack, which is a player in the right 8 or left 8 that wants to penetrate into the box on the dribble. We all know Martin Odegaard is very hard to dispossess, and he's a good dribbler, but he dribbles to keep possession. He doesn't dribble to penetrate and dribble to go around players, and he doesn't have that body strength that Kudus has either. I'd love to see a right 8 or a left 8 as an option at Arsenal who wants to take the ball and actually go into the box and drive. We don't have many penalty kicks these days. I'm sure you guys are all aware of that. That's one of the reasons. There's nobody really penetrating into the box from those areas. So he would offer you a different look to Odegaard in that regard.
I love all the points I had no idea he was so versatile and that he could play in potential 4 positions. Makes all the perfect sense in the world when I text my buddy Wesley, who supports West Ham from over here from the States. Said a few years ago when we were linked with Kudus, I go, hey, so can we have him? And he simply replied, go to hell. Yeah. It all makes sense now. It's all adding up. So I get it now. The player in general seems fantastic but what you guys are telling me. I had no idea that he played in midfield. Ajax he came from, if I'm not mistaken, and I know that Moss pointed out that he was linked to us and potentially even wanted to come to us prior to moving to West Ham, and unfortunately didn't quite pull the trigger on that one, so we missed out on him and we were forced to pay double if not triple this time around if we are to get him from one side of London to the Arsenal. But great option, Mike, in my opinion. As I said, striker wasn't the priority for me. It was attacking. And the fact that he could play in so many different positions seems wonderful for me. So I'm pro that. Chris, you were up next with your second pick. We got Benjamin Sesko at £70 million.
And there he goes.
Yeah. We have to take a striker. We have to take a striker this summer, and I don't think there are any surefire bets. Even with Victor Gyökeres, I don't think he's nailed on. I think the only nailed on one is Alexander Isak, and we all know we're not going to get him. Newcastle won't sell him to us, and
they don't have to now.
We don't have to, and we won't pay the fee anyway. So I think we are in a privileged position in some ways where we have somebody in Kai Havertz who I think would have been on pace or was on pace for something closer to 20 goals past season, which means that we don't necessarily need to have a guy who bangs right away, especially if you fix that left wing position who adds a lot of goal threat in Barcola in my fantasy squad that I'm assembling here. And so I think you can bet on potential at the striker position, knowing you've got Kai sitting there who can keep things humming along and playing sort of that false 9 role. So what I like about Sesko is he's been a goal scorer from a very young age. He's got 50 goals already as a senior player. He's only 21, 22. He plays in a top 5 league, so you have a bit more confidence that that goal scoring is going to translate and probably even grow because of his age. I love the intensity with which he runs. He has both this kind of physical quality to him. He's 6'5". He runs like the wind, a lot like Holland in that, he's rapid, but he's a big guy. But also he's got the technical side of things that he's still developing, but I think is an underrated dribbler and carrier of the ball. I love that he can put his foot through it. I mean, this guy scores a ton of goals from outside the box. He's got he leathers shots like crazy, but he also has nice touch inside the box as well. So he has a variety of ways to score goals. I think he'd be a menace on set pieces. So just add another big guy in on set pieces along with Gabriel and Havertz. I mean, we're going to have an enormous team when we have corners and set pieces, and I think we'll be even harder to defend. I think we need a guy in that striker position who can run in behind, which he also does, which can press that back line back that creates that space in between the lines for our 8s to receive the ball, which I don't think we do a very good job of today. I can't remember the last time we had a goal where we had a striker basically run off the shoulder of a defender and get in behind and score a goal that way. I think Sechko can do that, especially with the right 6 behind.
Martinelli's the only player who does that in our squad.
He does, and he doesn't do it very often, unfortunately. So, and I think that's partly on who we have serving the ball to our players. It's partly the system and the fact that we tend to play conservatively, but I also think it's the players we have. And I think he's one that can change the calculus on that. So, again, he is a bit of a bet. You are betting on future potential. He's not worth 70 million today, but he could be worth a lot more in the future. And that's a bet I'm willing to make. So I like the business that we're trying to get done here.
He is, besides Erling Haaland, is the best physical talent center forward in the world.
Yep.
In the world.
Absolutely.
There's no better combination of size and speed and power and athleticism in the world besides Erling Haaland. And that's why we're going to have to pay, if we get him, we have to pay 70 plus instead of 40 plus, because 6'5" sprinters who can run all day and jump out of the gym and can shoot the ball with either foot through the back of the net from 30 yards out. There's a reason why Arsenal have been on him for 2 years and why Arteta rules over someone like that. Because imagine, like, here's what our Mikel Arteta thinks, right? Look what I've done with Kai Havertz, who's kind of like a 9.5, 8.
And Marino.
And Mikel Marino, who is never, like, my favorite Marino thing ever, because he's an incredibly honest and like normal guy. So Mikel, what was the last time you played striker? Never. I've never played striker before. After he scored like the goals in the Premier League. Imagine what Mikel Arteta believes that he can do with a literally a top, a 99.9 percentile physical talent at striker. All the things that he can do. What Mikel Arteta looks at when he thinks of Benjamin Šeško is he thinks within 2 years, I'm going to have a cross. I'm going to create a cross between Erling Haaland and Kai Havertz, who's going to do the doggies that Havertz does, who's going to have the intensity and selflessness of Havertz. He's going to train that out of him, and he's going to have a 25 plus goal per season striker that creates all the menace and all the fear that Haaland does, but actually works off the ball too. That's what he looks at Šeško, and that's what he thinks. And that giant, speedy, chiseled lump of clay is what he wants. And that's why Arsenal are probably going to sign him.
I'll add this. The most important thing that you guys are missing out is the fact that he admires Zlatan.
Yeah.
So,
he plays like him too.
He plays like him too. Well, okay, so playing
there's some ego shots there, man. There's some ego balls where he just fucking tons it from 40 yards out. Well, it's awful. He has some Nuno Tavares hacks on the ball.
Yeah, there's a clip going around where he just catches the goalkeeper off his line. He said, "Fuck it, I'm going to shoot from here," and from the outside of the foot, he just curls it in from all types of yards away from the box. And that
motherfucker hits the ball, man. If it's him and Haaland, the guy who angrily they hit the ball harder than any human person has the right to kick a football.
It's like they're pissed off at the ball. Yeah.
Oh my God.
As far as the Gyökeres and Šeško debate, I used to, entering the transfer window, I didn't have a clear favorite, but I will say the more that I've seen the highlights of them two, I feel like Šeško just scores so many different types of goals. I don't know. There's
He
something
only scores
about-
like a quarter of the amount that
I guess 100% of the shots you don't take there. You gotta take it.
Yeah, you got to keep in mind when we watch Šeško bang these ungodly shots off, that for every one of those, Viktor Gyökeres has scored that one plus 3 other ones. Kind of, you have to think about it that way too.
Thanks for pissing in my bowl of cereal here.
That's what I do. What I do.
Prior to moving on, because I'm curious, because this is the 2 strikers that we have in going down the list. Mike, is there any reason whatsoever why you ended up choosing Viktor Gyökeres over Šeško?
Yeah, Arsenal just spend the majority of every single game against good, bad, and ugly teams in the opponent's penalty area, and I just prefer the feeling that Viktor Gyökeres gives me in regards to hunger. I think that when I watch Šeško play, I see arguably a more talented athlete, as Kelly is talking about. I don't know that you could doubt that. I mean, he's almost the supreme athlete, and so there's going to be so many opportunities for him to score goals, but I can't get away from the fact that when you're playing against a low block and you're outnumbered 2-1, and you're spending so much time in that area, you need somebody who just wants it more. And Arsenal don't have that. And I see that in Gyökeres. And it's not that I don't see it in Šeško, but I don't see an improvement, an upgrade in that particular facet of the game, the hunger. I see, a similar sort of hunger in Havertz as I do in Šeško in that situation in a crowded box, which is how Arsenal play almost all their football. And, I think it was Kelly or maybe Chris, I'm not sure, was talked about how Arsenal don't utilise the ball behind, which has been one of my bugbears for so long, and how Saka never runs behind, always wants it to feet. And I appreciate that so much about Šeško, but how many times in a game, maybe once in every game maximum, Arsenal have that opportunity to transition, break away and utilise that skill set, versus how many times do we have the ball in and around the opponent's box? Like hundreds. I mean, it seems that way. That's an exaggeration, but I think Arsenal are going to become more and more, with Zubamendi in particular, they're going to become more and more about control. They'll have even more of the ball, and so that player, whoever that player is, has to be good in small spaces.
This is maybe where the Darwin Nunez comparison, the negative comparison, comes up, where Darwin Nunez, like Šeško, is an elite stretch athlete who shoots up at both feet and is kind of a wild card. And I think that from a personality perspective, I don't know, like none of us know Šeško, but he doesn't seem. Leipzig and the Bundesliga and the Leipzig system would coach out some of the Nunez idea, which is the complete like maverick shit. But physically, the kind of wild cardy, long, lean, sprinty into space athlete that'll whack it from anywhere. That's a big concern too, as Mike McD says. The playing style that we have, and the way that, and maybe even more so, the way that opponents at all levels play us may require a box technician. And I think my pick that you'll see later reflects more of a box technician, like box predator, rather than an elite run and jump athlete. Because I think that there's a very good chance that the way we play, and more so the way that other teams play us, might minimize the supreme athletic talents that make Šeško so special.
Yeah.
That's the fear.
Have you chosen Victor Osimhen?
No, way more left field than that.
You just wait for it, Mike. You just wait and see.
He's chosen someone. He's chosen an Italian, I bet.
There you go. That how
Maybe.
unlikely. Maybe, yeah.
I already pulled the label of my Italian beer. I'm drinking beer Moretti right now.
Just because you were on the conversation about being coached out of things, I just I recall a story because he's so out there with the long shots, and I often joke around saying if you're too offensive, that's not what Arteta likes. Like, you're not an Arteta player, because you have to be more reserved. And I remember, just speaking about it, the player he admires, Zlatan, saying once he grabbed the ball, took a few defenders on, and scored in La Liga, and immediately Pep Guardiola pulled him out. And, as soon as he gets off the pitch, he goes, "What's wrong?" He goes, "You're not supposed to do that." And he told Pep, "But I scored." He goes, "I don't care. You're not supposed to do that." And it's we're so firm on patterns of play and whatnot. So I'm not saying it was going to happen, but I do think that some coaches take this exact method of playing a little too far. And I think it's a dying part of the game, to which you don't let players just express themselves a little bit. If we could get a little of Arsene Wenger, just go out and do whatever the shit you want type of training in here, then we're getting some fun football. Yeah, I'm 2 beers in. That's why I praised Arsene Wenger right there, Kelly. That's what happened.
Yeah, clip that for sure.
Clip that for sure. Where is Sebi when you need him? Kelly,
he's
number 1 pick is actually Chris's number 1 pick, actually.
Yeah, my number 2 is Chris's number 1.
There you go.
So we'll be able to do a quick zap over this, but again, I think that we've done this one really, really thoroughly. Barklow's a system fit. He's an age fit. If you can sell him on the project, is that you are the superstar. You're not behind Doué. You're not behind Ousmane Dembele. You're not a key You're not a key contributor. You are a frontline superstar here, and you play in the way that it's basically you can play where Martinelli plays, but you're just going to do it a lot better and more efficiently. And the age profile, and again, like, obviously, we're a very French. There's a lot of French-centric team. We have a lot of history with that, with French players, and I think there's a very if Barcola was the target, I think Arsenal Football Club, maybe more so than any other football club, honestly, makes a very, very compelling argument to Barcola. From a player standpoint, from a key, like a featured player perspective, from a opportunity to start a ton of games for, you literally just played us and you know our style, you know what we're about. I think there's a very compelling argument if Barcola was inclined, and I kind of agree that this is more pie in the sky, because I think Barcola would do another year and try to overtake Doué and maybe overtake Kvaratskhelia and see what positions he can be. He's a very versatile player, and he's at an age where probably riding the good vibes of being the treble winner off of France when you're from France. He's from Lyon, I think general Lyon area. It's unlikely that this is be there, but this Arsenal's project and what we do and how we do it seems like a great fit for him, like really stylistically an outstanding fit for him. And should he want to be the highline guy, like, you go from maybe being the third banana and maybe even fourth banana on the PSG front line to being a conquering hero who's really getting a ton of hype in the biggest league and the most visible league in the world. So that's for all that we've said before and those additional comments. I think I would love Barcola, and probably from a time perspective, it's probably not the worst thing to have a little bit of redundancy right now, but we can move on.
No, sounds good. Mike, you're up next. Your pick number 3. One player that seemingly is confirmed. We flirted with the idea of picking players that we know we are in for, and some that we're completely not. So, for the example that Kelly put at number 1 was Wharton, right? And plays center defensive midfielder. We were saying we already had Zubimendi, but we're kind of living in a wacky, different universe here. Yeah. So, Mike,
we're living in the portal where none of the other business is going to happen. Our director of football windows are the director of football windows that happen for Arsenal Football Club. So we're looking through the funhouse mirror a little bit here. So it's hard to adjust, but
different universe, and yet Mike McDonald still landed on Martin Zubimendi at £51 million.
Yep.
Paying that release clause, I like it.
Yeah. So I'm going to be brief with him. I just think he was born to play as a deep line playmaker in this team. I don't think there's anybody in world football that Mikel Arteta was anywhere near as interested in. And even though we're pretending to be something that we're not. I suppose we also have to take into account the coach that we have, and the word that he uses more than any other as far as his ambition for the team on the pitch is control. And if you want to control games, you have to have a player that can control in that position. You have to have a player that can control them for you and be the quarterback. And so he is that. He is arguably the best in the world at that position. If you want to do what Arsenal need you to do, he's got excellent awareness offensively, can move the ball quicker than the options we've had in the past, move the ball progressively forward. He has a wonderful passing range. The skill that I think hasn't been talked about, but we will enjoy next season, is that he's two-footed. And I know we love Santi Cazorla when he moved back to central midfield, and that was one of the advantages. He didn't have to shift the ball onto his favourite foot to pass it if the opportunity was there, and opportunities go so quickly. You have to be able to hit the ball. And we saw Santi Cazorla, you may have seen Santi Cazorla score a goal today for Oviedo with his weak foot, chose to hit it with his left foot. Zubimendi has a very similar.
He has no weak foot, Mike. He has no weak foot. Both,
yeah,
both Cazorla and Zubimendi.
Yeah. So and Zubimendi defensively, he might not be the quickest or the most aggressive, but positioning, interceptions. I think Chris will be able to talk about his statistics in regards to that. They're excellent. So I think it would be hard to find a better all-round player that can control games and control the transition than Martin Zubimendi. And I look forward to watching him play. I think he's just born to play for Arsenal. Be it Arteta's team or any of the Arsenal teams I've watched, he's just a very Arsenal player. So I think it's a fantastic purchase and fit. The last thing I'll say is, if he's as good as I'm saying, as good as Arteta probably thinks, and he is potentially the best in the world going both ways, if he's in that conversation, then 51 million, dang, that is a bargain. Because that player, if he's that good, will be closer to 100 million than 50 million. So that might be another reason. I think I said earlier, I would have chosen Wharton if I had the budget. But I talked about that. But this guy for 51 million, I think he's going to be a star at the Emirates.
I would like to put my ignorance on display, if you will, for the game of football, and say that the handful of times in which I watched Zubimendi play, I don't look at him and say, holy shit, he's like Sergio Busquets regen. I haven't caught up on the hype, Mike, and my co-hosts know that I'm very guilty at not appreciating things off the ball as much as other people and the manager does. And there's something about his game on the offensive and the front foot that sometimes I look at him and I'm like, well, he doesn't wow me as you know, as I'm being a child here, right? Like I want to be amused, but like I saw it with Declan Rice a few times, a lot of times playing with us. And maybe I will say this, and everybody knows this from me, anybody that listens to the podcast at the very least, I change my damn opinion all the time. So I'm sure the minute they announce him, I'm going to just fall in love with him regardless of anything, Mike. But I think it's one of those things that were like, as much as I joke around and say I dislike stats, maybe a chart might help me comprehend a little bit what his strengths are. But just out the gate, like I was sitting down watching Spain versus Portugal, and yes, he scored a goal, but I'm kind of like, he didn't do anything, or like he didn't take the game with the scruff of the neck, if you will.
He's Mikel Arteta, by the way. Like that's who he is.
Okay,
Yeah,
fair enough.
He is. Hey, let me just add, Mike, that he isn't a YouTube kind of player. He isn't the kind of player. You know, all of us are talking about all these players, and most of these guys we don't really watch a whole lot because we're Arsenal fans. They don't play for Arsenal right now. But Zubimendi's the kind of player, if he played for your club, you would appreciate so much more, because he is so he plays the game simplistically, and in that position, if you're on an island as the sole central midfielder, you have to have a player that is low risk. And so he is that, and I think you would only appreciate him if he played for your team, because he's never going to wow you, because that's not his game. But you need someone who's reliable. I'd also say that I think this Spanish team that's playing right now and winning right now is underrated. I think that they're a whole lot better than people are giving credit for. Close to that generation 10 years ago, and he gets picked every single time. And that's a huge compliment to him. And I'd also say, Mike, if you can maybe close your ears when I say this last part, is that Arsenal apparently are paying Sociedad an extra 5 or 10 million, so they don't have to pay his release clause. They can pay it over 5 years. But Mike's closed his ears, so he's 51 million, Mike.
We'll go with that. I mean, had I heard what I thought I heard, I would be bet that out already, for sure, Mike.
Yeah.
No, again, I'm guilty at not seeing off the ball things, and so I have no problem saying that I don't view football the way like Chris Kelly and Mike does. One quick thing to add about a profile like his, and I'm going to talk about another guy who has a very similar profile but not the same player, is that it's going to simplify the other two midfielders' roles, because right now Odegaard is running his legs off because he has to drop deep in order to get the ball progress up the pitch, because we just don't have the consistency in the players at the base of the midfield to do that for us. And so Odegaard's having to run a bunch more. And I think partly why we've seen a drop in his performance is that he's having to do so much more work. He's almost doing 1.5 jobs out there. I think a player like Martin Zubimendi, who is equally footed, who is one-touch player, who gets the ball out, who is the brain of the operation, will allow Odegaard to play a bit more higher up the pitch than he's used to and has been. I think that simplified role is going to help us to get more out of Odegaard as well, and maybe even Rice as well, playing next to him. So I'm excited about this profile in particular, because I think it's going to get a lot more out of some other players that I think have underwhelmed recently.
Very nice. Let's see. Up next, Chris. Chris coming at us with pick number 3 in the Bundesliga. Definitely have never seen this player. I saw that he recently got linked with Liverpool, but I don't know how much Liverpool is going to continue to buy after spending 150 million on Wirtz. But here you go. Pick number 3 for Chris. As far as priority goes, we got Angelo Stiller.
Oh, nice. He's a great footballer.
I do. He is kind of the hipster pick, if you will, of my selections.
For sure.
He's a guy that I've only come to know about this past year. I'm sure Kelly's probably seen him played more than I have, but he's a deep lying playmaker. He's very left footed. So unlike Zubimendi, who is very good off both feet, Stiller is got a magical left foot. He plays for Stuttgart, so that's probably why many of you may not have heard of him before. But he's 24. He looks like he could be got for about 35 million, so roughly 15 to 20 million less than Zubimendi. And he's just entering his prime year. So I think he just has this sort of perfect profile for the phase that we're in, where we're about to get the best out of this player moving forward. And he's at the right price. So I wanted him over Zubimendi only because I could get a few more tens of millions of dollars for buying other players, and the fact that I think he approximates what Zubimendi does. He's a German international as well, so he's got lots of experience at the international level. One thing that I noted in my research on him is that Tony Kroos, said that if Real Madrid had asked him who they should go buy to replace him, he said Angelo Stiller. And that's because Angelo Stiller's game is very similar to Tony Kroos's. And I looked up and I found actually some really interesting data that would suggest that is the case. If I can find this. This is a radar really quickly from Stiller's last season at Stuttgart and Tony Kroos's season at Real Madrid in 22-23. I mean, they're almost identical in terms of output. And forward passes, forward pass completion, key passes, progressive passes. You can see on this radar, it's all mostly about passing because that's really his superpower. But he can carry. He doesn't do a lot defensively, which is fine because Zubimendi's not going to do a lot of that either. But when he does have to do some duels, he will get in there and do some dueling, which we know Arteta likes. Anyways, all that to say, we need a guy at the base of midfield who can progress the ball at the pitch. And watching comps, looking at his data, would suggest he's elite at this. Here's another graph I found. This is Angelo Stiller, again, 24 years old versus top 7 league U24 midfielders. So comparing his output to all other midfielders who are 24 years or younger in the top 7 leagues, and he's first or second in basically any passing category you can think of.
Yeah.
Especially, I want to highlight things like forward passes, long passes completed, progressive passes completed, progressive passes, progressive actions. Like, you can see a real pattern here in that he is a guy who's going to get you up the pitch and quick. And I think that is what we all love about Zubimendi, and I think that's what Angelo Stiller can bring to this side. Last thing I'll say, you may have seen a picture of him. He's quite an ugly guy. He was born with a cleft lip.
Yeah.
And he's endured a ton of bullying and adversity just by the way he looks. And I think that part of his profile, while this is very subjective, I think feels very much like an Arteta player, because Arteta has historically loved guys who have faced adversity, who have had to overcome something. Yeah. And this guy's version of that is his appearance. And the fact that this guy is gone so under the radar, not many people have heard of him. He plays for the German national team. He's been compared to Toni Kroos. He's got all the raw materials to be that base of the midfield progressive passer. And he has this backstory, I think, tells me that he will have not only the ability and the skill, but the character that Arteta loves. And I think, you said early on, Mike, that Liverpool were linked with him. He feels very much like a Liverpool buy. As we know, Liverpool looked for a number 6. They tried buying Zubimendi. Zubimendi rebuffed their advances. They looked at Caicedo. They looked at a bunch of guys. They settled on what they could get in Endo and Gravenberch last year.
Who also was from Stuttgart, by the way, Endo was.
Yes, that's right. And I think at 35 million, it just feels very Liverpool for them to buy a guy that's, under the radar, that maybe underappreciated, that probably is being bought at a discount because of that, but would go in and do a real job for a top level Premier League team. So that's my assessment of this guy.
So this is somebody that I would fall over myself to get at Dortmund, by the way. But he's not going to Dortmund because he's going higher than the second best team in the Bundesliga. So really, Stiller is going to end up at a top 4 club in a better league, or he's going to end up at Bayern Munich if somebody else doesn't come to get him first. But he is, especially after last season, he is literally one of the best progressive passers in the world, literally. And he's somebody who is very, very admired by a lot of people. So I think this is a great pick. And again, it's really, really bizarre that in 2025 we live in this universe, but you probably get a 20% discount on him because of how he looks.
Totally. Which
is fucking crazy.
It
but
is.
He's not selling shoes, and he's not. I mean, he looks odd because of how he was born and what his physical appearance is, and that will knock literally any other 24-year-old starting level player for the German national team that plays in that position would not be a less than 40 mil a year purchase. It's literally you get a 20% discount because he's strange looking, which is really fucking weird, but it is what it is.
One last thing I'll say about him, which I thought was unbelievable when I read up on it, is that he's so good at passing. He's got 13 assists in the past 2 seasons from a number 6 position. That's really unheard of. And again, we're looking for guys that can put us in positions to score goals because we don't score enough of those. You put a runner in Sesko ahead of him. You've got a guy in Barcola who will run at pace at a defensive back line. You're not going to be able to have teams that are just going to set up in a mid block against us anymore when you've got a guy at the base who can spray passes like this guy can, or like Zubimendi can as well. So, matching him with some pace up front, guys who can get in the box and convert chances. I mean, I think this guy would absolutely bang.
Mm-hmm.
It's an insane way of looking at it, but it is something that actually factually happens. I recall a story in which Fiorentino Perez passed up on Ronaldinho because he wasn't handsome enough to play for Real Madrid.
Crazy.
And the rest is history. So seems
Wild.
like one hell of a player.
I will gladly take ugly people in the side if they can do a job, and that means that they're cheaper than they would otherwise be.
I always joke about the handsomeness quotient that we seem to have for a long time, but if you can get Stiller for that price, like he looks really, really good when he plays for Stuttgart too, because Stuttgart's a fun team to watch, and noteworthy too that he had 8 assists this year. His pure center forward, Guirassy, actually went to Dortmund and scored 20 plus league goals at Dortmund last year. So he didn't have the all-world, all-striker guy banging in goals where you just have to whack it near him and you get an assist. That's not how it was this year for Stuttgart's more balanced attack. So, having 8 from a pure deep line playmaker, having 8 league assists is pretty damn good. And he's even if he's not as well thought of in maybe America and England, like he truly has an elite profile within Germany.
I know most of you guys in the chat probably haven't heard of him. Just go watch a couple comps or watch an old game of Stuttgart's.
He's really good.
Unbelievable.
Okay, we'll do. Now, Kelly is entering the striker conversation. Pick number 3. I like that, Kelly. Winger and defensive midfielder first. Striker third. Here it comes.
Yeah.
He's been banging this drum for quite some time. 45 million pounds. And Matteo Retegui.
Yeah, so this is one of my priors. So a little bit of background on this player. This is somebody who I when Paramount Plus in the United States had the Argentina and Brazilian domestic league, and I had no idea who to cheer for. I wanted to have a rooting interest after COVID. First of all, there's like 1 million teams in the Argentinian domestic league anyway. There's like 28 teams, and there's like multiple competitions and multiple halves of seasons and all of that. Everybody knows River Plate. Everybody knows Boca Juniors, but there's a lot of other really interesting clubs there and who produce a lot of European level talent. And basically, I did the open-minded thing where I went, okay, I'm going to watch some matches and I'm going to figure out what style of play that I like. And that's going to be the thing. And I think I was watching, I think it was maybe Talleres maybe, or another maybe top 8 to 10 more prestigious club in one of the matches, and they played Atletico Tigre, which is Tigres is in Buenos Aires, but is kind of I would equate them as a lower mid-table club who's gotten bounced a little bit between the top and second divisions, has made a couple cup runs, but is largely a not particularly fashionable club. And they had this guy playing center forward, and I was like, this guy's fucking unbelievable. He was always around the ball. He could finish with both feet, with his head. He was perpetually dangerous in the box. Like, who the fuck is this? And it was Matteo Retegui. And so watching him play, he was so obviously, so clearly one of the best players. He's on loan from Boca Juniors too and had a release clause. So Tigre ended up buying him. He, again, so clearly better than everybody else on Tigre and was basically the best center forward in a league where they produce a lot of like European level attacking talent. He went over to Genoa. Didn't do as well for a pretty bad Genoa team, but he's Italian. He's born in Argentina, but has Italian heritage, and so Argentina wants Ciro. God, this is getting so niche, but Ciro Immobile couldn't play for the national team where they don't have any center forwards really, and so they start working him into the process, or the Italian national team starts getting minutes there. So his profile is really kind of pumping up, and he got into Atalanta, which is a very like Gianpiero Gasparini had until he left. God, this is so niche. I've had too many drinks, but like anyway, he got to Atalanta and just exploded, right? So he went in and just kind of looking at him this season, in less than 2,400 league minutes, he had 25 goals and 8 assists. Outperformed his XG by 6. Actually, because his teammates didn't convert, his XA is only a couple more, but he is literally one of the best box players and the best box strikers in the world. And it's difficult to always envision this because he is average size and he has average physical gifts. So he doesn't have a huge athletic burst. He doesn't have the big strapping, like wide shoulders and frame and everything. He's kind of an unassuming looking guy. But this is an elite box player who's been an elite box center forward everywhere that he's gone in his professional career. He's just turned 26 last month. So he's entering the prime of his career. He only makes 54 grand a week at Atlanta. So you could bring this player in at a very reasonable price with all this output and all this box talent and kind of like what Mike McDonald talked about before with Gyökeres. Like, the big appeal is that we do a great job of getting the ball into the attacking zones, and we have nobody who goes and finishes the chances. We have nobody who can be a technician and get shots off and have these shot volumes and score these goals in the box. And that's basically what Retegui does. Retegui is not going to be somebody who fashionably and dynamically gets you into the box like Šeško can, right? But when he gets into the box, he's taking almost 4 shots per match. He's creating 3 shots per. He still is technically secure. He passes in the 78th percentile for pass completion. He receives tons of progressive passes. Like, he is in and around the box, and he knows that when he's in the box, his job is to shoot and score off of both feet and with his head. And I always love center forwards who can score every type of goal. And even though he's not physically dominant, he's a player who scores and can create chances from every conceivable situation with again, left foot, right foot, header, corner kicks, set pieces, pullbacks, creating his own shot at the top of the 18. He's a player that I think there's a very good chance that I don't know that he ends up at an Arsenal. I think that might be a step too high, but he's somebody who would conceivably go to like the middle of the Premier League. He bangs in 20 goals and all of a sudden he's not 45 million anymore. He's 80 million because he's in his prime and all he does is score goals. And that's a player that I think if especially in the absence of having access to Šeško and not wanting to pay for the risk of Gyökeres, I think this is a guy who is an elite type of box forward that could do unbelievable things for this club. And again, not have the pressure and the financial pressure to play him in place of Havertz. And again, somebody who can score in 2,300 minutes, can score 25 league goals. Really a player I've admired for a long time. So this is a good excuse for me to suitcase him into a conversation about Arsenal, because I do think that he would score a lot of goals here.
Absolutely love it. I talk about creativeness, so to say. You went outside of the box. You didn't go with Gyökeres. You didn't go with Šeško. And as you said, and you recapped, you've been banging on this guy for a very long time, and time has proven you right, considerably right so far.
I will say that never crossed my radar in terms of thinking about him as a striker. My backup striker actually was going to be Hugo Ekitike, and I'm surprised no one picked him. But
100 million, that's why.
Yeah, exactly. The price tag is what puts everybody off. But
what a blown budget.
There are so many strikers out there that are imperfect, but if you get it just right, could really bang. And it's really about picking the right one.
Yeah.
All right, boys, we got out of our top 3. We're going to skew things down a little bit. Just recap. We got some have 4th, 5th, plus a bonus, and Chris was the most conservative one, watching out for his budget. He went bang for his buck. He only has 4 main ones plus one bonus one. So the bonus one we're going to take out of the equation of the math, because otherwise in that we're just completely blowing our budget out of the water. But this is for fun. This is an alternate universe in which we have money to spend. We're pretending that Tavares was sold by Lazio for 100 million, and we got a massive fallout with a sell-on clause, and we have all the extra monies to play around with. So you are up next, Mike. Your 4th pick with you know what? I'm not going to even try to pronounce this.
Maxence Lacroix. Come on now,
Thank
Mike.
you. Yeah, no. Look,
I don't speak Spanish.
Look at my hair. Do I look like Sebi to you? I was never going to pronounce that.
All right, well,
go for it, Mike.
So I love a French player with a very, very French name. I think Chris said it, Maxence Lacroix.
There you go.
You may remember him from when we played Palace fairly recently. He had a great game. Very quick. I believe it's his first season in the Premier League. Fantastic pickup by Palace, who picked up some very good players recently, and he's just one of them. I love their right back as well, Munoz. But I wanted to find a player that could do Tomiyasu's job. I would honestly rather keep Tomiyasu and believe that Tomiyasu can stay fit, but I'm not so sure that's going to happen. I'm not even sure what his injury really is. I'm not sure if we've even been told, but he's been out the entire season. Anyway, this guy's available for 20. So my main reason for doing Lacroix is he's a second season player. And I think all of you guys are very familiar with the fact that I wish there was a chart for this. Maybe Chris can rustle one up, but most every successful foreign player in the Premier League really hit their stride in their second season. And you have to be patient with them in their first season. And it's unusual that they really bang in their first season. And that's all very understandable when you think about new country, new language, new league, harder league, all those things. And I want a player at Arsenal who is hitting his second season, and that would give Arteta the confidence to give Saliba in particular a rest. And this guy is the closest I could find to profile similarly to William Saliba. Fantastic presence, same height, same body type, same speed, maybe even quicker. And I think that he's settled now, and he's going to be in his second season. And I only had a little bit of money. It was just, it was a 20 million pick, and it was an easy one because he checked so many of the boxes. I felt almost lucky to find him. And I'm not sure if many watching will even remember, because, of course, he's not creating any headlines, is he? Let's be honest, unless you watch Crystal Palace, support Crystal Palace. But I have two friends who are Palace fans who tell me that he was up for player of the season in one of their most successful seasons that they've ever had. And they had a lot of competition, and they loved him. And so I thought 20 million, there we go, back up for Saliba. Maxence Lacroix.
They didn't miss Joachim Andersen. They sold him to Fulham, and they got this guy in, and they didn't miss a beat. In fact, I think they probably improved at center back when they brought him in. So
yeah,
shrewd buy by Crystal Palace. And he's 25, so mid-prime, and not a bad shot there, Mike, especially with 20 million left.
Yeah.
Remember the time where we were linked with Anderson and another player from Sampdoria back to back? That was good summer.
Good times. Let's pine for those.
Good times. All right, short and sweet. And Chris, your pick number 4. You got goalkeeper coming in, Kepa.
It's Kepa. I mean, it's basically done and dusted. 5 million. Pretty easy. It's a backup keeper, a guy who's played a lot as a number 1, willing to come and quote unquote fight for his place. I think knowing he's going to be the number 2. We were looking at a guy for 25 million, supposedly be the next best thing. But as long as we have Raya, is that what we really need? I think this is a much better use of our quote unquote limited resources. And I think it's a shrewd buy. I know a lot of people aren't going to like it. He was a meme. When he played at Chelsea and refused to go off the pitch, and he does make some headline kind of boner plays sometimes, but I'm hoping that, he's going to be playing 10, 12 games a year, spelling Raya in the kind of the lower cup games, the odd Champions League game, maybe the odd Premier League game. And that's about it. So spend 5 million, get a solid backup keeper, much better than a Neto like we had last year. And I think it's good business. So not much more needs to be said.
It is the market opportunity for goalkeeper in the world. And we took it, and we were able to pitch it to him. And I think, one, being a nice landing spot for Chelsea players and keeping him in London, I think the story on him too is that he is he's fairly recently married and has a young family that are settled in London. So he's kind of ready to get paid for a backup keeper in the Premier League, a relatively bloated wage in exchange for having his people very smartly negotiate a 5 million release clause, because that is Matt Turner just got transferred to Lyon for 8 million.
8 million
as a frame of reference, and that guy,
really,
holy shit, is he fucking horrible? Yeah, he is like that is like, I would rather who's the 17-year-old guy we had to shove in the League Cup this year? Do we even know that guy's name?
Pop quiz. No, I'm not prepared to answer that question.
Jack Porter.
Yeah, I
Boom.
forgot his name.
Mike
Would rather
for the
play
day.
Jack Porter than Matt Turner in the Premier League game.
It's pretty
I'm
sad.
not joking. So, anyway.
If you guys doubted that I was the guy who hated the U.S. men's national team, it's actually Kelly.
Oh my God, they're so.
No, Kelly.
I'm not going to do it. Not here. Not the time.
Focus on number 4. That's all I need from you. Not a U.S. rant.
Oh, here's another fun one.
All hat stands.
So raise your hand if you ever heard of this guy.
I have, but I don't know anything about him.
He is the best attacking midfielder in the championship. He is.
Buendia?
Yeah, I know. We have the shades of Emi Buendia, but I mean, truly, this is somebody who is a magician, kind of in that between the center of the pitch and the kind of the top of the 18, the zone, or top of the zone 14. He's an outstanding player. So he has an incredible shot from range. He is super creative on the ball. He's more physically robust than he would seem to be, given his frame. Creates a lot of shots. Is a relatively secure passer, a good dribbler, high touch. Like if you go through the stats and everything too. I mean, but the two things I do like about him is that it's not just a stats thing, and his counting stats are fucking unbelievable. He had 18 goals and 4 assists as an interior forward. So he played either as like more of a number 10 or a withdrawn striker or as a left winger, largely. And he's right-footed too. We have a lot of left footers, so he's somebody who fits that type of profile. But he also absolutely explodes off the screen with the type of physical talent, the tricks, the being light on his feet. He kind of reminds me of like if Fabio Vieira like gave a shit and wasn't just terrified of everything happening. It's like his performance, and again, it's the championship, so you got to grade on a curve a little bit, but like he kind of he plays in a way that you'd think like if Fabio Vieira got it up him and wasn't just shitting himself all the time playing on a top stage. I would equate that's a similar type of player as far as body type, as far as playing style, and again, like his real superpower is having an absolutely unbelievable shot. From outside the 18. He's really, really a fun player. And he's, again, like I looked at him and I thought that he was going to be kind of an also-ran from Spain, who's going to be older. He literally just turned 24 towards the end of last season. So he's entering his physical prime with not a ton of miles on him. So he went, again, he was at Alaves when he was young, played in the second tier of Spain, and then was in Turkey. And he's been at Norwich since then. And he didn't really do anything 2 years ago. Was a more consistent starter last season. He absolutely exploded on 3,600 minutes, and it is one of the very best and one of the most fun and entertaining players in the entire championship.
What nationality is he, Kelly?
Spanish. Yep. So he's Spanish. So he's never going to get into a national team either. So as far as that's concerned, like again, more of an Arteta thing. Like Arteta really never played for the Spanish national team. He's too far down the pecking order to ever play for them, aside unless he would go to the Premier League or an elite league and explode. Because they just don't have to have too much talent. But again, really an elite top third of the championship player, and somebody whose skill set and the things that he does really well really fill in the things that we need help with. And again, if he's going to be more of have more forward thrust and have a high engine and everything, there's maybe your guy who can spot start some left wing and maybe play some relief for Odegaard. And I looked at El Canuso, which again, I apologize if I stomped on anybody's things too, but I've watched Borja Sanz play a lot, and he's not a championship player. He's a Premier League level player. And for a lot of different reasons. He'd be somebody who you've never heard of, and all of a sudden he leathers, in 4 weeks, he leathers 2 25-yard bombs in, and all of a sudden everybody knows who he is.
Yeah. You think he'll get bought by a Premier League team this season?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why he wouldn't, given his talent and his output and his age. I mean, a Bournemouth, like Mike McD said, a Brighton. West Ham are stupid, so they probably won't. But like the mid with Palace again. Palace if they lose Eze, maybe that's somebody that they pivot to. He's a really, really a fun player. And again, if you want to like YouTube comp out somebody, like look at his YouTube comp. He's a really, really entertaining, exciting, dynamic attacker, especially in the final third. And that's a skill set that can translate from the championship up to the Premier League too.
Very nice. I forgot to say just in the last round, Kippa was Chris's last pick as far as rounding off his 200 mil was. The player that follows that is just kind of his bonus FU money. Meanwhile, Mike is using up his fifth choice, last choice to round off his 200 plus millish for the cap that he has. Here we go. Back to Kippa.
Yeah. So Kepa, much like Chris said, or maybe Kelly said, sorry, the market opportunity of the summer. I mean, he's from the meme that Chris was talking about. He's now a very solid Premier League goalkeeper who was one of the best goalkeepers in the league this season, to be fair. And so you've got him probably purchased a goalkeeper who's worth perhaps 25, 30, maybe. I don't know what you guys would say about that number, but he's in that range now. He's put himself there. And you've got him for as good as nothing. I just don't understand why he's chosen Arsenal. I mean, he must really have some self-belief if he thinks he's going to nudge David Raya out the way. Maybe like Kelly said, maybe it's just the London thing, the family thing. And I don't get it. I don't get why he's chosen Arsenal, because he's played, I think, every game for Bournemouth, was very good. And after being lost in the wilderness at Chelsea for a year or so, and now he's going to potentially be lost in the wilderness at Arsenal. I mean, it's to our advantage that we have a pretty good backup goalkeeper now. So I just couldn't resist one of the deals of the summer. So that my best friend is a Bournemouth fan, and I just shouted Bournemouth a few minutes ago when Kelly's very clever pick there. I think Bournemouth is a club that Sainz might actually end up at because of Iriola, and Iriola will be very aware of him, I'm sure. And that sounds like, and they're going to have a whole lot of money to spend, aren't they, Bournemouth?
Yeah.
Anyway, but Kepa, my friend tells me, is as good as anybody with his feet, so that's nice to hear. And I like the fact that, well, I said this about Raheem Sterling and I was wrong, but I kind of think that Kepa's got something to prove to Chelsea. And Raheem didn't do it. Maybe Kepa will, but maybe Kepa won't play and it won't matter. But yeah, that's enough on him.
If he comes out with an announcement video that says, my best is yet to come or whatever, some crap that Sterling came out with, and we know it's over. So let's just hope that he doesn't say that in his announcement video.
Yeah.
He's going to hand the pen over to somebody, to William. He's coming back. That'd be absolutely wonderful.
That fucking guy.
So this is the FU money pick for Chris, his fifth and final one. We have Morgan Rogers. I like.
He's a fun watch.
So yeah, this is more of like not a perfect fit for Arsenal necessarily, but a player I love to watch, and I think I've seen him terrorize our midfield, and would be like, I would love some of that at Arsenal. I mean, the reason why I say he's not a perfect fit is that I think he is the perfect example of the blessing and the curse of a flexible player. He can play interior, exterior, the 10. He could probably play as like a withdrawn striker, a second striker. And with that, the problem is that he doesn't really have a predefined role that you go, that's exactly where you need to play him. And I think it's the blessing and the curse of a guy who is just kind of good at a lot of different things. And he's got the physical profile of a player who can just boss it in midfield. His scoring output is tremendous. He's got an engine on him. He's got, he's physical. So like, it's hard to take the ball off of him. He scores goals. He's 23. Can't remember how old he is. He's a dribbler, which again said we need a lot more of that in our squad. He can add that in spades. He's not afraid to take risks, especially when he receives the ball in tight situations. And again, as I said before, we're going to have Barcola and Sesko in my fantasy team. That's going to pull that defense, that backline defense, so that he's going to be able to sit within in between the lines, and I think he would be a great guy to have sit there, playing as a left 8, again, sometimes out wide. He just finished his first full season in the league in the Champions League, and no one thought he looked out of place. In fact, if anything, he often looked like the best player on the pitch. So he's a guy I've enjoyed watching. Again, he's not necessarily like a glove, fit like a glove kind of player in our system as of yet, but he's still young, and I would bet on Arteta to be able to kind of define a role for him that he could really make his own. So love the player, and I think, adding to our attack in those kind of positions on the left-hand side, I think would be tremendous. So Morgan Rogers, 60 million.
Morgan Rogers. This is within the 200 mil hypothetical that we had for Kelly, his 5th and final pick. He's going for the goalkeeper spot.
Yeah, I can guarantee you 99% you haven't heard it. So again, more background on even Provedel. So Provedel was somebody who has been, up until this season, was Lazio's number 1. So again, a little bit of a niche pick for me, being a Lazio supporter. Really, really good shot stopper, especially in Italy, which tends to have relatively poor goalkeepers with their feet. Gigi Donnarumma is maybe the number 1 poster boy for that, and maybe the best shot stopper in the world, can barely kick a football. And he was as Mikey knows, at AC Milan for many, many years. It's not a league where you have a lot of play out, but actually Provedel is quite good with his feet, both in launch and short passing. Like I said, good shot stopper, had worked his way all the way up from being kind of a mid-table to lower table goalkeeper to unexpectedly taking Lazio's number 1 shirt and getting call-ups and playing and starting matches for the Italian national team. And something happened this season where he just didn't get on well with their new manager. The playing style was different. It went from a 3 at the back with wing backs, in kind of a variable system. And even he did well under Sarri in the 4-3-3, and it was kind of back to wing backs and all over the place. And it just didn't hit. He had some bad matches, and he was replaced by a pretty marginal backup. And it looks like he's in a spot now where, between his wage and his status, he'd likely be looking to move. So he'd be available on a relatively inexpensive deal. He's 31 years old. So, early to mid prime for goalkeeper. Again, really, really a strong shot stopper, good with his feet, calm. The only reason that he's available now is that he just had a poor season for a manager who was there for 1 season and got fired. And now, hilariously, because Lazio is a shit show, Mauricio Sarri is actually coming back. So because Sarri's coming back and Provedel was his first choice goalkeeper, I would kind of anticipate that he would be staying there, and we'll just get his shirt back and continue to be the starter for Lazio. But as far as market opportunity goes, he would be there. I know in this pod last year, I had another Italian goalkeeper, not Italian, but plays in Italy, Vanya Milinkovic-Savic, who I'm shocked is still playing his trade in lower table Italy. I think they're good goalkeepers there, and especially the ones that are good with their feet really stand out in that league. And Provedel would be one of those players that would be, you give him a small raise, and he's a really, really solid goalkeeper that you have no problem playing in cup competitions. Or if God forbid something happens to Rai, you still have a guy who can save the shots, who's played in a big stadium in a big league, who has international starting experience, and who can do some of the same things that you need to do as a goalkeeper for probably, in that kind of 10 million or so, probably less range.
Okay. Yeah. I think it almost makes a little bit more sense for him to make the move financially and everything to Kepa. Just circling back to the reasons why Kepa wanted to leave Chelsea for the Arsenal. Mike, this is your if I had extra money pick, and initially you had asked for, was it Naipan?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, the strong links that came through this evening or today in general, versus that he might be on his way to Manchester City, you decided to pivot to a bigger, shinier toy in Antoine Semenyo.
Love him.
Yeah. So gutted when the Naipan story came out. And I understand it. He gets to go to Girona for a year, 2-footed, line-breaking, dribbling, attacking midfielder, natural footballer, born to play the game. He's going to be a star, whether he gets to play for City or whether he becomes a Morgan Rogers that has to leave City. which is quite likely. I considered Ezri Konza instead of Lacroix, but he's double the price. I think Arsenal might be part of taking advantage of the fact Villa have 95% wages to income ratio, and they're having to sell somebody. Maybe it's Rodgers. I've got a funny feeling about Konza because they won't want to get rid of Rodgers, and Konza's doing extremely well for the national team in England, and him and Guehi, I think, are the two best that England have right now. So I considered him. I considered Gibbs White. I think once he gets a little bit more airtime, people will realise that he has some of the best vision of anybody playing in the Premier League, and good for him that he's playing for a team where he's getting a bit more recognition, and maybe he should just stay at Forest. But I considered him. But this guy was the guy I was talking about earlier. Didn't mention his name. That I would have had as my second pick, my left wing, if I would have had a player had the money to get a attacking midfielder and a left winger. But so anyway, I went with.
You need to become the director of football for Chelsea or City. Sorry, Mike.
By everyone. So, but this was the guy, and the reason that I settled on him rather than all the other multitude of rumours and options is that I believe he had the highest number of shots in the Premier League. And, for those of us who've been following Arsenal for 20 years plus, one of the words we shout at the TV more often than any other is shoot. Because
For sure.
That's sort of the point of the game, and Arsenal aren't very good at the point of the game, which is taking the chance to shoot when you've got it. And I want a player at Arsenal who's going to do something different, not something similar to what we have, something different. And I love a player that wants to shoot. He is, yet again, totally two-footed. I think he had almost as many shots with one foot as he did the other one. It's hard to tell if I believe he's right-footed, but he plays right and left, so you've got that flexibility. When he came on at the Emirates, the game changed. He changed the game. I think we remember that. Just that powerful running from a substitute. So I would see him, funnily enough, initially at Arsenal as that. What does Arteta call it? He doesn't call them substitutes. He has another name, doesn't he? He calls them finishers. That's it. People who finish the game. I think a player like that would be devastating. A player coming off the bench with that kind of power, strength, ability to go right, left, willing to shoot. We just don't have that. And when you looked at our bench from December onwards, it was pretty pitiful. But if you'd had a guy like that who can play equally well on both sides, and he's also played centre forward as well for a decent chunk of his career, I think you're just offering the game a chance to break open with a player who's just too powerful for the legs left on the field and the fatigue on the field. So if Mike Hers would have been a little more generous with his money, I would have taken Semenyo earlier. But he only
just
gave
called
me
you Stan Kroenke,
million.
Mike.
I'm a spoiled brat, so 100 million just wasn't enough.
I want to start calling you Stan Kroenke, Mike. That's who you are. Stan Kroenke.
I can't start showing favoritism, Mike. My co-host would never let me live this down. Then Chris, Rodgers was your FU money, if you will, and then Kelly, you're up next with your final pick. I like this one, Kelly. Huge admirer. I've been talking about this guy forever myself. Marcos Llorente.
Wow.
Yeah. So Llorente, this is another big, very Kelly service thing. I'm here servicing myself in front of all of you, and I'm charging you for $10.
Greatest hits.
Yeah, playing the hits for sure today. He's the best utility player in the world. He plays right wing, he plays left wing, he plays as an interior forward, he plays as a midfielder, he plays as right back. He's basically a player who can play at a top 4 to 6 La Liga level in 5 different positions, in multiple positions in the same game now. For what his price would be now, he's, I think, 29 years old, so probably 30 to 40 million. But if you're looking at a player who can be a Premier League level starter at multiple positions, He's a player I absolutely love. He has an engine that is unbelievable. He is a favorite of Diego Simeone, who was almost certainly brought in from Real Madrid and kind of played mostly at Castilla, but was brought in by Berta or with Berta's input. So there's a connection there. Speaking of players that you love, and I don't see a natural fit where you just drop him in. But as far as like having an elite utility player, I can't think of a better marriage between player and manager than Llorente to Simeone. And as we know, as with Simeone, I think is maybe the greatest analog to Mikel Arteta as far as his position within the club, his influence within the club, and his love for tenacious, full-hearted, full-blooded technical players who can solve all sorts of different problems in the same match. And he's one of those players that in the world where I am the bag man. I would love to see this guy come in because he could play in any competition at like 5 different positions and do it not just well, but spectacularly well. He's one of the most talented footballers in the world. And again, the curse of not having a defined position has probably prevented him from being a starting player for the Spanish national team and being a player that more people have heard of. But he's the best, and probably for 3 or 4 years now, he's the best utility player in the world.
Very nice. I was just looking at. I have been progressively thinking about names, and we're coming towards the end of that was the final pick of the podcast in general. So a few names been brought up. Hato has been one of them. Got brought up very early in the podcast. Gordon got brought up in the live chat. Yep. And one that Stan the Man has been pointed out a lot, and I'm surprised none of you went with him, was Eze.
Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic footballer. We all know what we need in midfield, and he was on a rampage this last season, but he's been doing just fantastic for the last few seasons. Everybody was expecting him to leave with at least this past summer, so I'm generally surprised. Maybe it was just wasn't in the budget, the manner in which you guys prioritize things, but interesting. Another one, just because you mentioned Marco Llorente, he's Spaniard, and I'm just going back to Spaniards right now, and a fantastic utility player that is 33, that if I had done this list, I would have said sign him for free because he's leaving Real Madrid for free, is Lucas Vazquez.
Yep.
That man has literally played left back, right back, left ring, right ring, midfielder, and striker.
Yep.
Look, 33, but he want to sign him on a free just for SNGs for two seasons. I love myself a player that plays in a multitude of positions. So we're going to wrap things up. We're going to give you guys a total here because I did add them up. Now, priority number 1 for Mike McDonald. Going from first to last, if you will, it's Gyökeres, Kudus, Zubimendi, French dude that I don't know how to pronounce, and
Maxence Wakwa.
Thank you. For a total of 211 mil plus 40 mil for Semenyo if he had the extra money. Chris, you got Barcola at number 1, Šeško number 2, Stiller number 3, Kepa number 4, for a total of 190 million. Sir Stan Kroenke would absolutely love you. Plus 60 million for Rodgers if you had the money to just spend. And here we go, rounding off the pod. We got Kelly. We got Wharton at number 1. He went with the defensive midfielder. Barcola at number 2. Retegui, his long-term love, number 3. Borja Sanz for number 4. And Boldo something. What was
Ivan
Provedel. Thank you very much. The last and 5th for 10 million. Even 200 mil for Kelly. Mike is the most bad behaved here. He went over, if you will. And then 40 million on Marco Llorente, just to top things off if you had a little bit of extra money. So that was essentially our exercise, playing and pretending that we were directors of football for the game, for the night, if you will. It's something that we kind of do, quite frankly, every year at this point. Yeah. We always invite Mike back. I got my first Lucas Vasquez 2025. Oh no, absolutely, man. We're up later than we're getting
profile.
Yeah, when we get really late over here, and it's really early in England, we always have new people to tune in. And one hell of a remark to come into a live chat is somebody asking for Lucas Vasquez in 2025 for the Arsenal.
We've been blocked immediately. We're done.
Fantastic podcast as always. It's been an absolute blast. I want to give you guys the opportunity to say your goodbyes. Kelly, tell dear listener where they can find you.
On Twitter at South Metro AFC. Again, I am hiding behind the mask right now too. So my actual handle now is because apparently I watch professional wrestling now in the last 2 months. So I'm El Grande Arsenalo on there.
Love that.
Which is fun. So now hers and I connect on that very silly and puddle deep level as well as everything else. So I have some wrestling takes on there too.
And we're alienating Chris with the wrestling talk every time. Every time you and I start chatting about wrestling, I could just picture Chris's eyes just rolling.
I grew up watching it and loving it, but as a 40-something-year-old man, I just can't get on board with it.
That seems sensible.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you know why, Chris? Because you matured and you grew like normal people do. Chris, you want to tell dear listener where they can find you?
West Suburban AFC on X, Twitter, whatever. Haven't been doing a lot of tweeting lately because I've been really busy. So I'm kind of sporadic, especially in the off season. But once the league season hits, I'm all about the Bants for as long as I can credibly do it and not look like a fool. So follow me, don't follow me. It's all good.
Yeah.
Very nice. And last but not least, Mike McDonald. Once again, thank you so much for joining us. It's always a pleasure to have you on. We might have you on eventually to not run a marathon with us and try to do 3 hours. That would be nice. So we'll get you on for I'm going to say a more normal chat. You want to tell dear listeners where you can find you and what you are up to, sir?
Yeah, so I write post-match review blogs for Gunnerstown and have done for many years. And if you go to the game at the Emirates, you can pick up the Gooner fanzine. And I'm Coach Mike in the Gooner fanzine at the stadium, which is a lot of fun writing about tactics. Thank you very much for letting me and my director of football chair onto the podcast today. I hope you've enjoyed my chair as much as I have.
If Bertha doesn't have a chair that size, Arsenal aren't treating them well. I can tell you that much for free. I'll leave you guys in the live chat with this last comment, and that is that Mike gives our little pod some credibility. I said very little pod, but somehow we know a lot of good people. I will say that. So I've been Mike Hers. You were going to say something, Mike? I saw you.
No, I'm good. Thank you, guys.
All right. I've been Mike Hers. You can find us on Spotify, iTunes, and, of course, YouTube. We're all here as we do the Gyökeres celebration on the way out. Thank you so much for joining us live chat. Made it this far. And if you haven't, by any chance, subscribe. Really do appreciate it. And tell a friend. Boys and girls, till next time. Bye.
Right foot this time, Martin Odegaard.
Zinchenko from Ketchia. It's in, it's 4. Martinelli tiptoeing in. Predatory, perfect. There is a gorgeous arrogance about Arsenal now.
It really is. They are enjoying every second of this.